Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday today on the program. Ian is here. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Not the result we wanted last night in a hockey game.
No, probably
not
not.
the result I wanted.
Yeah, no. Not for the first game, but.
No. And we'll get into the hockey game today. We got a lot to get to here on the program. Very long season. And, you know, again, look, if it's a playoff game and Steven Stamkos hits a post with 10 seconds to go and you don't end up in over whatever, that's one thing. It's the first game of the year. That's a totally different thing. But we got to get to the game on Sunday, the Titans and the Colts. And I keep bringing this up. And I don't mean this to depress you or to depress me, but it is somewhat depressing, which is this idea when it comes to the Titans season that I'm really deep down inside searching for meaning. And the reason I'm searching for meaning is because I'm looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm looking for a way to know that the Titans are on the right path. We said this year was all about finding out whether or not Will Levis is the guy. The only thing that is debatable up into this point is, has Will Levis already proven that he's not the guy? That's a debate. There is no debate about whether or not Will Levis has proven he is the guy. That's a different discussion. But the reason that we want to know he's the guy is because we want to know that at some point one day they could compete for the Super Bowl. I think we know even if Levis was the guy, if he panned out, they probably weren't going to win the Super Bowl. But Jaden Daniels, and it's early, but Jaden Daniels in Washington looks like the guy. But I don't think that the Commanders are competing for the Super Bowl this year. So winning, is it helpful? Is it, you know, it's kind of depressing. But I do think this week does have meaning. There's no excuse for the Titans to lose this game on Sunday to the Colts. That is, if the Titans aren't actively tanking. If the Titans are actively tanking, then you can lose every game. But considering that I don't think the Titans, who spent the money they spent in the offseason and who went around on every possible podcast and talked about how good the team was going to be this year, the Titans, who the coach said, yeah, we do look at the standings, we do scoreboard watch, who has kind of hinted at the playoffs still as a possibility, I don't think they're actively tanking in the building. Could be wrong, but I don't think so. And if they aren't actively tanking, then there is absolutely no excuse, in my opinion, to lose on Sunday to the Colts. And here's why. Number one, the Colts' best quarterback right now is Joe Flacco. Like, I mean, again, you know me, I would have drafted Anthony Richardson number one ahead of C.J. Stroud. But right now, the best quarterback on the Colts is Joe Flacco. But with Anthony Richardson being a consistent full participant this week, Anthony Richardson's going to play. And right now, Anthony Richardson's not very good. He's very poorly coached. He's probably still injured. And the guy who, again, I think is really, really important to making a young quarterback successful when it comes to the Colts would be their star running back. He is injured and is out for the game on Sunday. By the way, their best player on defense is also out on Sunday. That's DeForest Buckner. And, Ian, I thought Michael Pittman Jr. was on IR, but apparently he might play Sunday.
Oh, I don't think they officially placed him on IR, but I saw that he was a candidate and that he could miss a couple of weeks.
So I thought Adam Schefter reported, I mean, what do I know? I thought Adam Schefter reported that he was headed to IR. And if Adam Schefter's reporting that he's headed to IR, chances are the sourcing on that's usually pretty good. And then all of a sudden he's practicing out there today. So maybe he plays. I don't know. But physically, the Colts are in terrible shape and the Titans are coming off their bye week. So the Titans don't have physical issues. In fact, Brian Callahan just said, Will Levis, good to go. Jeffrey Simmons, good to go on Sunday. Number two, the Colts have the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. Dead freaking last. They are 29th versus the pass. They are 31st versus the rush. So they are both bad versus the run and the pass, just to give you an example of how bad it truly is. Malik Willis, when he played him, had a better passer rating against Indianapolis than the Titans game that he played a week later. And we talked about it after Malik came in here. He looked like Michael Vick. He looked like Randall Cunningham. He looked like Lamar Jackson. He looked like all those guys combined into one when he came in here. And he actually played better against the Colts. That's how bad the Colts defense is. So the Colts are banged up. They're playing their second best quarterback. Their best offensive player isn't in. Their best defensive player isn't in. They have the worst defense in the entire NFL. And again, just to continue to show you how bad the Colts defense really is. As bad as Will Levis has been, Trevor Lawrence had been absolutely awful this year. Trevor Lawrence, up until last week, had never completed more than 57% of his passes in a game this season. Trevor Lawrence completed 83% of his passes for 371 yards on Sunday. So again, never over 57, and he completes 83. Awful. And earlier in the week, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, they didn't practice, which means that if those guys are and, well, I mean, just saying how it is, you've got one-star corner, L'Jarius Sneed. So there is a matchup there that you can play and take away their best receiver and the real guy who's a threat to you on Sunday. Because unless you're worried about Trey Sermon running the ball, I don't really know how the Colts are going to score points on the number one, for whatever that's worth, defense in the NFL. So the Titans should win on Sunday. But again, as Chad Withrow said on our program earlier this week, we can talk about things on paper all we want. On paper is for losers. When you lose, you come back and say, well, on paper, this team should have won the game. Which is why if they lose on Sunday, then I think there have to be big questions as far as the organization is concerned. I know everybody wants to believe that when you make a change, it's always a change for the better. I know you didn't fire Mike Vrabel to get worse. You didn't fire John Robinson to get worse. But the reality, and this is an NFL where you are what your record says you are, the reality is in both cases, you have gotten worse. You have gotten worse since John Robinson was your general manager, and you have gotten worse since Mike Vrabel was your coach. And I'm not saying Brian Callahan can't get better as a coach, because he can. And I'm not saying that I'm holding this against the committee of Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan and everybody else who has a say around there. I'm not saying I'm holding this against them, because they haven't lost this game yet. But I think, you go into the game with one of two outcomes at hand. The first outcome is they take on Indianapolis, they win the game, which they should do at home. You win the game, and after you win the game, you turn around and you're 2-3 with a 25% chance of the playoffs, and hopefully the quarterback does something good. Hopefully the 30% of this fan base that's still holding out hope for the quarterback can call into the show on Monday and say, see, Jared, you see that throw Levis made to Ridley? That's what's capable. He's getting there. That's what I hope. And that's one outcome. And I hope for the Titans' sake, I hope that happens. Although it would hurt their draft stock for next year, which I hate talking about this early in October, but again, it is what it is. But the other side of the coin is if you don't win. Again, forget about the quarterback. So, I mean, the quarterback, if you don't win, clearly there's going to be blame on him. But it's going to be hard to believe that he's the guy, even if they do win this game on Sunday, given the fact that Trevor Lawrence did just torch this same defense for darn near 40 points. But if you don't win this game, the question really has to be, how could a football team that is spending the money the Titans are spending, granted, it's still not a top half of the league payroll, but spending the money on a running back, spending the money on a wide receiver, spending the money on 2 corners, spending the money on 2 inside backers, spending the money. How could a team that was competitive 2 years ago be constantly getting worse? I mean, I think that right now this Colts team is in worse shape than Green Bay was when they played you. And so I think Sunday is a big game for this operation. I think Sunday is a big game for all of them. I think it's a big game for Brinker. I think it's a big game for Carthon. I think it's a big game for Callahan. Because if they don't win, it's only because their operation, given how slanted it looks one side versus the other, given the state of the Colts right now, if they don't win, then it is an operational issue within the organization. And if that's the case, you have to ask yourself, are you just throwing good money after bad by keeping the same people in here that would lose to a Colts team that, again, is 32nd in defense, bad against the run, bad against the pass, can't beat Malik Willis, they don't have their best offensive player, they don't have their best defensive player. I mean, at that point, do we need to start having these conversations? And so for the Titans' sake, you need to win. Now, big picture, as far as the draft pick and that's concerned, well, I mean, it's going to be hurt if you win on Sunday, and it is what it is. But again, as far as just hoping that your organization is being led in the right direction, we have to have that conversation if they lose to this Colts team on Sunday. It's not just going to be Will Levis's fault, because the Colts are in such bad shape right now that it can't just be Will Levis's fault. So we're going to have the conversation if they can't win. This is so one-sided. They have got to win on Sunday. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. So there's one thing. If you want to win this game on Sunday, there's one thing, one name, one word, it's one thing that they got to do. And we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, Fireball Hot Take Friday, 102.5, 106 the game.
Calvin, we're trying to win. Whatever we can do to win, that's what Calvin and I want to do. So, we're not really too much concerned about targets and receptions. Calvin and myself, and also Tyler Boyd, I think we're just trying to win.
That was DeAndre Hopkins yesterday. And you hear DeAndre talking about, hey, guys like me and Calvin Ridley, we just want to win. And do you know where that came from? That whole DeAndre talking about, hey, we just want to win. Me and Calvin Ridley, we just want to win.
What do you mean where it came from?
Did you hear about Kaharski and Calvin Ridley yesterday?
No.
So apparently, now I wasn't there. I'm not claiming to be there. I heard Joe talking about this morning, and I have heard some of this, behind the scenes. Apparently, Kaharski made a comment to Calvin Ridley or asked a question of Calvin Ridley about, needing more targets. Obviously, the idea that Calvin Ridley's not producing given the big contract has been not just a big topic of concern around here, but, that NFL aggregating Twitter handle, Dove Kleinman or whatever, put up a thing about Calvin Ridley. And it was like, through 4 weeks, Calvin Ridley has been blank. And a lot of people were making comments, about, oh, he's been this or he's been that. And I guess Kaharski asked a question about shouldn't a guy who's being paid $50 million be a bigger part of the offense or demanding more targets or something. Again, I wasn't there. I just heard about this. And I guess Calvin Ridley went nuts. It was basically like, don't talk about my contract, but in a much angrier tone. And the thing with Calvin Ridley, and DeAndre was kind of alluding to it there, is that they're not worried about the targets. They're worried about winning, which I actually think is a good thing. And if I was the coach, it'd be a very good thing to hear that Calvin Ridley's not worried about targets, that DeAndre Hopkins is not worried about targets. Because if I was the coach, I wouldn't be worried about getting the ball to Calvin Ridley or getting the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. There's one guy on this team on Sunday I'd be worried about getting the ball to, and that is Tony Pollard. See, I went on Robbie and Joe this morning, and they were talking about, don't you think Ridley needs more targets? And I'm like, I'm not worried about that. We got to stop talking about this like they're the Golden State Warriors when they had Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and all of those guys. We got to stop acting like all of a sudden, oh my God, look at this plethora of weapons the Titans have. They've got Tajay Spears, who has less touchdowns than Jeremy McNichols. If you want to develop Will Levis, if you want to win the game on Sunday, and if you want to set things up for everybody else, Tony Pollard, Tony Pollard, Tony Pollard. Not Ridley, not Hopkins, not Spears, not the tight ends, and certainly not Treylon Burks, who the Titans keep giving opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to. Pollard. Pollard is the best player on the offense, and the Colts are 31st against the rush. Give the ball to Tony Pollard. You know who doesn't turn the ball over? Tony Pollard. You know who's tied for interceptions, the league with your quarterback? Their quarterback. And I have said this since training camp, because in training camp, I could see they weren't throwing the ball down the field. Brian Callahan kept making excuses. Remember? It was hot. I mean, how are they supposed to complete passes down the field when it's hot outside? Come on now. I remember everybody made a big deal about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase because Jamar Chase couldn't catch the ball at first. And obviously we saw how that turned out. Well, it does seem that apparently this Will Levis, Calvin Ridley connection is not Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, as much as he might want to talk this into existence. But I didn't live in Sunshine Land during training camp. I lived in reality. I kept saying, I don't think Skoronski's very good, and I kept noticing the problems at right tackle, and then the coach would get up at the press conference and say everything was great, and everybody'd say, why you all mad, Jared? You're overreacting, you're panicking, you're all those things. But now that we've seen the games, and there's really no cover for this, it is what it is. When it comes to the Titans, I kept saying at training camp, they've got to be a run-first team with Tony Pollard, period. No, Jared, we want to throw the ball. Well, now that you've gotten that out of your system, let's talk about what's best for the team. T-E-A-M, team. And I think it is to give the ball to Tony Pollard and to start treating Tony Pollard. And he is not as good as DeMarco Murray was. But they need to treat Tony Pollard like he is DeMarco Murray, the way Mike Mularkey's coaching staff treated DeMarco Murray in 2016. DeMarco Murray averaged 18.3 carries a game. 18.3 for the entire season. Pollard right now is currently averaging 15. So it's not that far off. But I think Tony Pollard needs to touch the ball 20 times on Sunday. And I don't care about anything else. I don't care about feeding anybody else. I don't care if anybody else is upset about it. I don't care what kind of formations I have to use in order to run it. But I would have walked into the meeting on Wednesday and I would have said, boys, they are 31st against the rush. They played the Green Bay Packers with Malik Willis at quarterback, and they gave the ball to Josh Jacobs 31 times, and he ran it for 150 yards. That's what we're going to do on Sunday. So this week, we're fresh. We had the bye week. They're injured. No DeForest Buckner. We're going to hand the ball to Tony Pollard, and we're going to run. Nick Vannett, get ready. You're playing a lot. NWI, who, again, I know they say Burks is a better blocker than NWI. I don't believe that. NWI, you're in there. Go block, because we're running the ball. And see, here's what's going to happen. Pollard's going to get it, and then all of a sudden, Indianapolis is going to have one of two choices. They're either going to adjust and bring people down in the box, which may allow you to attack them through the air, or what is more likely, because they didn't do this against the Packers, they're not going to adjust. They're just going to let you run the ball. And then you keep running it, and then you start to score. And then everybody feels good. And now Anthony Richardson's playing from behind. And now he's going to try to make something happen because he's feeling similar heat to what Will Levis is feeling. And if Indianapolis does adjust to it, then here comes the play action, and now everything is easier for the quarterback and the wide receiver. My buddy does the morning show in Indianapolis. We work together in Louisville. I talked to him today. He said their second best corner was a waiver claim 3 weeks ago. So you take all the pressure off the young quarterback, you hand it off to Tony Pollard, you make Indy stop it, and then once Indy commits to trying to stop it, you throw the ball. And then you'll get a lead, and everybody will say, great game, Will Levis. Will Levis was 13 of 17 for 161 yards and 1 touchdown. Great game, Will Levis. And Will Levis needs that, because I feel pretty certain in saying he's probably insecure about stinking. Like, he's probably insecure with this idea that if the coach is having to send him cuts during the week of, hey, Will, here's a stupid interception Joe Burrow threw, so you just feel like it's natural for this to happen, they know his confidence isn't probably very high. So give him a game where he doesn't have to do much, and then everybody will highlight the good that he does, take the ball out of his hands, and he'll play better. Because if you win the game and he has a nice little game with a couple of plays here and there, then people will think that that's the step that he needs to take. So talk to me about Tony Pollard. Don't bother me about Ridley. Don't bother me about Hopkins. Don't bother me about Spears. This obsession with Tajay Spears. The analytics say Tajay Spears is better than Derrick Henry. Okay, sure, whatever. If you want to win on Sunday, and if I was the owner, and again, like, I'm not against tanking because I don't know what the upside for this team is, but if I was the owner, you'd want to win. Because if you didn't win on Sunday, we'd be having some serious questions about why you didn't win against that terrible Indy team that's beat up after you're coming off a bye. If you want to win, and you want to develop the young quarterback, and you want to put him in a position to be successful, and you want to protect your horrendous pass blocking offensive line, Tony Pollard, Tony Pollard, Tony Pollard. I don't care where guys were drafted. I don't care how much money they make. I don't care. Give the ball to Pollard. He's the best player on the offense. It's the best thing you do. It's the worst thing they stop. Give it to Pollard. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. We'll get to your phones. Plus, who's got the edge? People seem to like this topic. So who's got the edge? Titans and Colts. And I was actually kind of stunned by some of the results. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Let's talk Fireball whiskey. That's right. The Fireball was a-flowing this past weekend on Broadway after the goalposts made their way down there. And this is going to be a great weekend for more Fireball and more celebrations. So for all of my Hebrews out there, tonight at sundown, no Fireball. But tomorrow at sundown, tons of Fireball. That's right. Fireball cinnamon whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
You got another week where so uncertainty about the opposing teams quarterback. How are they different with Flacco and Richardson, and maybe what's the challenge with each one?
I mean, the challenge with Flacco is his veteranness. He is not afraid to throw the ball down the field. They go hunting up for some shots as much as possible. He's certainly capable. I think he's one of the better deep ball throwers in football in general. Always has been. So that part you have to manage. He may not be able to move like Richardson can, but he doesn't need to because he knows where to go with the ball, and he ends up finding completions. Whereas Richardson, you just see the immense talent. I mean, he's the throws that he's put on tape are pretty remarkable. His ability to put the ball in his hand is a totally different dynamic as a runner, and you sort of have to treat the two quarterbacks in a different manner with your rush packages and how you rush the quarterback and all those things that go into the different styles. But yeah, there couldn't be like more polar opposite styles you're getting ready for than Joe and Anthony. And they both have, they're all capable of beating you, and they have talent. They're just very different styles, and it's a challenge.
Brian Callahan right there talking about the difference between Flacco and Anthony Richardson. Well, I assume Anthony Richardson is going to be playing for the Colts on Sunday, which is a good thing for both Anthony Richardson and the Titans, because right now Joe Flacco is the better quarterback. And just because Joe Flacco is the better quarterback right now, just like Mason Rudolph's the better quarterback right now, doesn't mean that it's not in the better interest of the team to play the other guy. But that takes us to our famous, very popular, Ian. People really like this for some reason.
Oh, yeah. It's a great segment.
Who has the edge? Who has the edge on Sunday? Each position group, again, I always tell the story that as I was driving into the stadium when I was a kid, I'd have the newspaper right there and I'd be flipping through, and the old Tennessean used to always kind of break down the game. Who has the edge? Titans and the Colts. Quarterback, even. And this is assuming Richardson plays. If Joe Flacco plays, I'm going Colts. But right now, even. Both guys turn the ball over. Richardson certainly has more potential as a runner, and Richardson certainly has more potential as a downfield passer. He's throwing for over 8.5 yards per attempt. Will Levis is throwing for 6.2. The Titans don't want Will Levis to throw the ball down the field. The Colts want Richardson to throw the ball down the field, and I think in both cases, both coaching staffs are getting it wrong. Running back, Titans. Jonathan Taylor is out. They let Zach Moss go to Cincinnati in free agency. Trey Sermon is their backup running back, and apparently Shane Steichen has some kind of fetish for him, but he sucks. Tony Pollard is the man, and Tajay Spears would certainly be the second best running back in this game, running back edge to the Titans. Offensive line, Colts, not even close. The Colts have, according to Pro Football Focus, last week, the number one offensive line in the NFL. And I don't know how true that is or it isn't. I know they've got Quentin Nelson, who's very good. I know they have Ryan Kelly, who's very good. I know they have two tackles in Raymond and Smith, although Smith was questionable. Offensive line, Colts. Pretty much everybody's got a better offensive line than the Titans. Pass catchers, even. We don't know what the status of Michael Pittman's going to be. We don't know the status of Josh Downs. So let's just operate under the idea that it is Pittman, Pierce, and Downs, Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, Mo Alley Cox at tight end. You've got Chigakonkwo. Both groups are kind of lousy. Pass catchers, even. Defensive line, Titans. The Colts kind of have their version of Tavondre Sweat and Grover Stewart, but their big ace, their Jeffrey Simmons, DeForest Buckner, is out. Simmons is in. And then the other guys on the defensive line for the Colts, they all stink. They don't get to the quarterback. Samson Ebekom's out for the year. Kwity Paye may be out for this game. He sucks anyways. And the Titans with Landry, who's a really good player, and Key, who's an average player. Titans have a better defensive line than the Indianapolis Colts. Inside backers, Titans. Now, this is actually the only one where I feel like the Titans have the edge because they have better players and the Colts don't have bad players. Like the Titans have Murray and Jones. They don't cover very well, but they do run sideline to sideline and they're tackling machines. The Colts have Zaire Franklin, who I think's been a little disappointing this year for Indianapolis. given the fact that I thought he was a real ace in the past. Zaire Franklin is good, but again, Kenneth Murray may be the best addition the Titans have made over the last 2 years, like in terms of the value and what they're getting in return. So the edge, inside linebacker, Titans. Defensive backs. I'm going to say even, is because your kicker makes field goals and my buddy that, again, does the morning show in Indianapolis complains about Matt Gay, the kicker, every single week. So I'm guessing they have a bad kicking game, and Rigoberto is fine as a punter for them. Stonehouse is fine as a punter for you if he can get it off. Your special teams coach, I mean, I got to tell you, this guy, first of all, this guy doesn't know the rules, and he should be fired over that. If you're a special teams coach, you don't know the special teams rules, like that's inexcusable. And secondly, he got up there yesterday and he was asking, about how they almost got on the punt block. And he was like, oh yeah, that's unacceptable around here. Except that he's not. Like, he says it's unacceptable, but if you just constantly say everything's good after you get your punts blocked or almost blocked, then you are accepting it. If you keep running the same guys out there, then you're accepting it. So I think he's a joke of a coach, but I'll go special teams even, and I'll go coaching even, because even though Shane Steichen won a handful of games last year with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback, I think the way they've treated Anthony Richardson, like the plan that they've implemented for Anthony Richardson, is downright deplorable compared to what I felt like they should have done for the talent that is Anthony Richardson. So how about this? For the first time this season, we've done a Who Has the Edge segment. The Titans have a significant edge for Sunday. They've got 4. The Colts have 1, which is the offensive line, and 4 are even. And in a lot of cases, it's like the evens are the bad versus the bad. 615-737-1025. And our phone lines today are driven by Wilson County Hyundai. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025 here on the program. One texter into the text line says, what on earth have you seen this year to make you think the Titans should win this game on Sunday? The answer is, I watched Indy against Green Bay. I watched Indy against Jacksonville. Indy is bad. And not only is Indy bad, but there's a combination of bad and stupid. And Indianapolis is that. I'm not convinced that your game plans, while I haven't liked them, the fact that Malik Willis was able to do what he did, while I haven't liked them, outside of your special teams coach, I'm not sure that I can look at the Titans and just circle it and say, well, that's stupid. But when Green Bay's running the ball 50 times in a game and Indy doesn't bring somebody down in the box, that's stupid. When Indy has Jonathan Taylor running the ball for over 100 yards on 12 carries, and you decide to throw it 30 times in a one-score game, that's stupid. So I've seen Indianapolis play. Indianapolis is terrible. And Indianapolis, stupid. And not only is Indianapolis stupid, but on top of it, they're injured. So they're bad, injured, and stupid. That's why I think the Titans should win this game. The Titans are coming off of a bye. The Titans are at home. Look, I'm not sure I like the idea of the Titans winning, because the Titans have proven as an organization. And I don't know when this changed, because, again, winning the division 2 straight years and going to the playoffs 3 years in a row and being 7-5 in first place wasn't good enough for the general manager to keep his job. So back then, 2 years ago, winning wasn't good enough. But now, even the smallest morsel of success around here is treated as if the Titans have turned the corner. And I worry that if they win the game on Sunday, because of Indy's incompetence, that we're going to sit here and I'm going to have to take phone calls and read text messages that are all about how great it was that the Titans were able to do what they did. Sorry. I mean, it just feels like that's what that is. 615-737-1025. More of your phones, 615-737-1025. Plus, I did this is crazy, Ian. I was looking for an audio cut like a year ago, and I couldn't find it. And Ian, you know how I am. When I get on something, like I'll spend 2 hours on something that we may run like 2 times.
Sure.
I mean, I searched and searched and searched and searched and couldn't find it. And then I found it today. I was looking for this a year ago. We'll get to it next. A little interesting nuggie going into the game. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And then we're right to your phones here on Stillman and Company. Hey, be sure to join us at JBJ's. That's right, John Bon Jovi's. JBJ's. Be sure to join us at JBJ's downtown on Broadway at 9:30 for the award-winning pregame show. Me, Derek, and Chris. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck National, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
Chris Rock, where they selected, that was one that you were really projected to go to. Do you remember like some of the meetings and things that you had with the Colts and how that went?
Yeah, I thought they went well, and I thought there was definitely a shot that I would be going there. And I think kind of right up until that draft day, like both Anthony and I were kind of like, who's it going to be? Like we don't know. And it was like I thought that it was a good chance, but obviously it didn't work out, and luckily ended up here.
That was Will Levis last year when asked about ahead of the Colts game about, hey, how close were you to going to the Colts? And Ian, I don't know if you remember, but every ESPN reporter across the country said the Colts love Will Levis. They're going to take Will Levis at 4. I think it was Todd McShay at the time wrote, if the Colts don't take Will Levis at 4, I have no idea what they're going to do.
All types of fun chatter at that time.
And I heard all that, and I said they're taking Richardson. Part of that is because that's what I would have done. But part of that is also because you're telling ESPN who you don't want. Oh, yeah, we want the running back. We really want the defensive end. Nobody trade up. But I was right. ESPN was wrong. But last year when that came out, I don't even remember why I was looking for it, but I was looking for the cut of Chris Ballard because I swore. I remember Chris Ballard said they would have drafted Will Levis if Anthony Richardson was not available. And I went through like all 3-day press conferences, the first day, second day, third day, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday press conferences from Chris Ballard after the draft, and I couldn't find it. I spent an hour, maybe an hour and a half looking for the cut. I searched on Twitter for Ballard and Levis to find a cut to figure out what day it was Ballard said that, and I couldn't find it. Well, I was looking up something on Jim Irsay today, and as I was listening through an old Jim Irsay press conference, this is after they selected Anthony Richardson, I found this little nuggie in there.
That I think if we had the first pick in the draft, we'd be taking the same guy probably.
If that guy's gone at 3, if someone trades up to get Richardson, what do you do it for?
Boy, you know that's always a tough hypothetical because, you know, until that moment hits and it's really upon you in the real world, you know, you have to realize, you know, you're still thinking on your feet some. I mean, obviously, you know, we're going to take Levis or trade down. I shouldn't say honestly, but I think we'd take Will Levis if we liked him. We did. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they would have taken Will Levis with that pick if Anthony Richardson wasn't there. And I know now it's like, well, who cares? They both suck. But, and I don't think Richardson sucks, by the way, but I am saying, like, they would have taken Will Levis with the 4th pick. And again, it's not, there's no real juice to that now. Like, whoa, great. What would that have done for them? Or what would that have done for you? Or whatever. But I spent like 2 hours trying to find that last year. Couldn't find it. Thought it was Chris Ballard said it was Jim Irsay who said it. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025. One texter says, the Titans should have just kept Henry if that's the case about you wanting to run first with Tony Pollard. Well, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Number one, and a lot of people said this yesterday when we were talking about Derrick Henry and how it'd be great for this young quarterback. If you're really, truly trying to develop a young quarterback, it would have been great to keep Derrick Henry. And everybody's response to that is, well, Derrick didn't want to be here. Well, I think there's a little bit of truth in that Derrick wanted to win a Super Bowl. But I also think that the Titans made it abundantly clear to Derrick that they didn't want him, which is why it was easy for Derrick to say, hey, you know, the Titans are going in a different direction and I'm going to go in a different direction and it's fine. When Rand Carthon got to the Titans, he wanted to tear it down. His actions tell you that. You know, they didn't want Kevin Byard and they found a way to get rid of him. And they didn't want Derrick Henry and they found a way to trade him. And then the owner shot it down, reportedly. And then they really pushed Ryan Tannehill to the side. I mean, they really kind of ran off kind of the old guard because they wanted to start over. And I don't know, would Derrick's opinion have changed if the Titans had valued Derrick Henry as much as I valued Derrick Henry? But again, my guy syndrome. Rand Carthon didn't draft Derrick Henry. That's not his guy. He wants his guy, the running back they drafted in the 3rd round, who's now the same. So I think it's probably more complicated about, did the Titans really want Derrick Henry back? Did the Titans make Derrick Henry feel loved? would that have changed Derrick Henry's opinion? But to answer your question, the thing this team needs right now, other than a right tackle and some turnovers on defense, is Derrick Henry. This team needs Derrick Henry. Well, you don't have Derrick Henry. Your second best option is Pollard. Pollard's good. Henry's great. Pollard's good. So I'm just telling you what the game plan should be with what you have now. One texter into the text line says, when Levis left the Miami game and Rudolph came in, the Titans started running the ball and blocking better. The Titans seemed to play better as a team and were more confident and calm. It seems like the team doesn't just trust or feel Levis as a leader. Do you think Levis can actually manage a team and lead it even if it's just handing off? Well, I mean, Mason Rudolph still had to throw the ball some. He didn't throw it a lot, but he had to throw it some. And the Titans had a lead, for the majority of the game that Rudolph was in. If they were behind, he would have had to throw and it would have looked different. We got to stop acting like the offensive line played well against Miami. I've heard too much of that. Pro Football Focus said that your offensive line performance against Miami was horrible. That, again, Tony Pollard had 88 yards and negative 0.4 yards were created on the offensive line running the ball. That's awful. That is a testament to what Tony Pollard did against Miami. But I see TD yesterday. God bless him. I love TD. But he's talking about, hey, PT played better against the Dolphins. PT allowed a sack and 4 pressures. That's pretty bad. Now, it's not as bad as 13 pressures, but it's bad. PT is unequivocally the worst offensive lineman in the NFL. But they were in a situation where the other team couldn't get a first down. The other team couldn't get a first down. Their best player didn't want to be there, didn't run after the football when it was on the ground. I mean, it's so I don't think the offensive line played better. I don't think they played better. I just think that the game was more conducive because the other team couldn't score. It's like the Packer game was a nightmare because Levis threw the pick 6 and now you have to pass and they've got pass rushers and there's no pressure on Malik and it makes Malik look better than he actually is. One texter says Joe Flacco is going to cook the Titans. I mean, I think Anthony Richardson's going to play, but when it comes to Joe Flacco, if he does play, I don't know how I'm going to pick this game. The Titans should win. If Flacco plays, I don't feel as staunch in my belief that Flacco should win the game. Ian, are we giving away tickets for Tuesday or Thursday? Because the copy you sent me says Thursday.
That is correct.
All right. Every hour today, we are giving away a pair of tickets to see the Predators take on Edmonton Thursday, October 17th at Bridgestone Arena. That's Connor McDavid, the defending Western Conference champions. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you're going on Thursday, so good luck there. Plus, too much rat poison. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. And let me say, this big college football weekend headlined by Oregon and Ohio State. And I don't know if you know this on this program, but we root for Oregon on this program. Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, is a great coach. He is a good man. And he's a good friend. And so we're rooting for him on Saturday to take down Ohio State. But the game that I care the most about, Louisville plays at Virginia at 2:30. That's not the game I care the most about. The game I care the most about is on 94.9 The Fan this weekend. It's Vandy taking on Kentucky. Because I think Vanderbilt needs to ride the momentum of the Alabama game, and they need to win the Kentucky game to go to 4-2. And to kind of send a message that, hey, this Alabama win wasn't a fluke, and that Vanderbilt is no longer the old Vanderbilt. You know, I don't know what the future holds for Vandy. Is this a blip on the radar, or is this the sign that Vandy football is going to be competitive going forward? And I don't know the answer to that. But something that I was worried about, something that was a problem for Alabama last week, is something I think's going to be a problem for Vandy this week against Kentucky, but I'm not sure. I absolutely think it's unacceptable for Alabama to act this way. I can't say I'm mad at Vandy. And that's all the rat poison that Vanderbilt has ingested since they won the game. Now, Clark Lee came on the show Monday. He was talking Kentucky, Kentucky, Kentucky. He had a press conference on Tuesday. And he was talking Kentucky, Kentucky, Kentucky. He said, hey, our guys go to class. They're going to get congratulated. We've told our team, hey, when somebody congratulates you, be respectful, but know that inside this building, we've moved on. And I thought that's the right approach to have. And maybe that is the approach the entire team's had. Diego Pavia said that when he woke up on Sunday, he texted everybody and said, hey, we got to win this week, because we got to go undefeated to give ourselves a chance of making the playoff, which I'm not really thinking about the playoff with Vandy, but I get it. Okay, fine. But man, has there been a lot of rat poison this week. But again, I can't be mad at them. Alabama should know better. They should act like they've been there before, because they have been there before. Vandy hasn't been there before. Alabama can get attention anytime they want to. So when Kalen DeBoer goes on Paul Feinbaum on Wednesday to talk about the Georgia win, he's really just taking everybody's mind off of the game that really matters, the one that's next. What's Tom Brady's favorite Super Bowl ring? The next one. That's what they've always said. But again, for Vandy, I can't be mad at the fact that Clark Lee's doing all these interviews, and Diego Pavia is on ESPN, and they bring on Johnny Manziel, and he's doing Dan Patrick, and Clark Lee's on Jim Rome. Hell, I can't get mad. Clark Lee came on this show. I can't be upset about it. Or last night at the Predators game, you know, before they dropped the puck, there's Diego Pavia and CJ Taylor and Clark Lee waving the towel. I can't be upset about it, because at Vanderbilt, attention is not something that they can just demand at will. If Will Levis picks up the phone right now and says, I want to go on the show, we'll put Will Levis on the show. That's not always the case with everybody else. If Alabama decides, hey, we want to go on the Feinbaum show, they go on the Feinbaum show whenever they want. I don't think Dan Patrick wants to talk to the Vandy quarterback every single week. And again, you only live once in life. So here's Diego Pavia's opportunity to get up there and have an entire building of hockey fans cheer for him as he's waving the towel on a Thursday night. But that's the rat poison. And I think this Kentucky game is so big for Vandy. And I think that Kentucky's a good team. They beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss. They hung tough with Georgia at home. I think Kentucky's a good team. Certainly, you're not going to have to lecture Kentucky about being ready for Vandy, whereas in some cases you might have to, because they'll be ready after Saturday. But I can't be mad at Vandy taking advantage of the situation. In fact, I've noticed on some of the recruiting stuff that the crystal balls or whatever they are, I don't follow the college recruiting, especially now with transfer portal and NIL. It changes so rapidly anyways. But Georgia had a defensive lineman who was committed to them, who went to the game as a Vanderbilt recruit on Saturday, decommitted from Georgia, and now the crystal ball is Vandy for this guy. And I saw another guy, I guess, that went, that now Vandy is in the lead for, who's a good recruit. And so for Clark doing these interviews, you got to get the brand out there. I get it. But I'm not sure, again, all of that attention and talking about the Bama game and being celebrated about the Bama game and everything else about the Bama game that happened last week, I'm not sure that's good for the Kentucky game. And if you lose to Kentucky, even though you're a double-digit dog, I think the perception of Vandy after that is going to be, well, it was nice while it lasted for Vandy. And I don't want that for Vandy. I want Vandy to win. I want Vandy to be respected. I want Vandy. Again, I don't want this just to be a blip on the radar, great moment for Vandy. I want this to be something for Vandy that they can carry forward, especially in this new era of college football. So I can't say I'm mad at them for embracing the attention, but it does worry me. It does worry me about the UK game. And then the one that set me on the edge again, and I'm not mad, but it's the rat poison. I was on Twitter today, and I don't follow Diego Pavia, but I am a huge fan of the For You tab. And Diego Pavia, 3 hours ago on Twitter, my first podcast is out. Co-host is Fluff. Ian, do we know who Fluff is?
No. I don't.
Well, I guarantee you that we're like old pawpaws, and there are people out there that know who this Fluff is. His co-host is Fluff, and his special guests, I don't know. His special guests are CJ Taylor and Eli Stowers. Diego Pavia has a podcast now, and it's launching this way after they beat Bama, and he's like, I'll do a podcast now. Like the Hawk Tua girl. Like, she got a podcast. She's getting the most famous people. She's probably got to sit down with both presidential candidates. She'll probably get them to both sit down with her at the same time. It's like, guys, Kentucky. If you beat Kentucky this week as a double-digit dog, the same way you beat Virginia Tech, if you beat Kentucky this week, there will be a sentiment around college football and the SEC that Vandy is to be respected, that Vandy's legit, and that it wasn't just a one-off. But if you get beat by Kentucky, then it's like, oh, well, it was nice while it lasted for Vandy. And I don't want that for Vandy. So no rat poison. But, man, there's been a lot of rat poison. Oh, I'm worried about the rat poison. One of our boys from the Door Report podcast is called into the show on the rat poison. I feel like I know your name, but I don't know you. What's your real name?
Jared, my man. My real name is Trevor.
Okay, Trevor. He's with the Door Report podcast. I do like this podcast. I do think you guys got some stones. I like it. Give me your thought on the rat poison. Go.
Jared, I hear what you're saying. Believe me, as a beaten down Vandy fan, I get what you're saying. But sources are telling me the boys are locked in this weekend. Let them have some fun. Let them enjoy the media. It's going to be a bad weekend to be a Wildcat, Jared.
That sounds like some fanboy crap, though. You know what I mean?
No, Jared, you got to trust
Yes,
the
it
sources.
does. Yes, it does. Your quarterback just launched a podcast 3 hours ago, and you think his mind is completely on Kentucky?
Dude, these kids are gamers nowadays.
And
I 100,000% believe he's on to Kentucky.
And Alabama's kids can't do that, but your kids can.
No, Clark Lee's instilled the program.
Yeah.
Instilled the program like here. Kalen DeBoer, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Do you yeah, I mean, his career record is 108-13. He doesn't have a clue, right?
Dude, soft West Coast football, Jared. They don't play it like that we do down here.
Trevor, boy, I tell you, see, this is what I can't do. Thank you for your call, though. This is what I can't do. I mean, look, I'm a fan of the Titans, but if you can't be remotely objective, I can't talk to you. Like, again, it's like, hey, my sources are telling me the boys are locked in. What are they going to tell you? Yeah, we've been too busy hollering at girls on Instagram this weekend to worry about Kentucky's run defense. They're not going to say it. The problem is you believing it. The quarterback just launched a podcast. Again, let's ask yourself this question, because everybody said this after Alabama lost. Nick Saban wouldn't have done that. Do you think Nick Saban's quarterback would have launched a podcast on Wednesday? Or, excuse me, on Friday, 3 hours ago? Do you think Nick Saban's quarterback would have launched a podcast the day before the Kentucky game after they beat Alabama? You know the answer to that. You know the answer to that. And again, I get it. I get it. But let's be careful with the rat poison. Let's be careful, because it's a big one against Kentucky. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. Corey Curtis, News 2, will join us next on the program on the Titans game against the Colts. We'll do it next. It's Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 the game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there to tune in for our college football game of the week tomorrow on 94.9 The Fan, Vandy, and Kentucky, presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. This week's Nashville's best deal is Fog Street Lawn Club. Get half off a $30 gift card now at theGameNashville.com/deals and dive into the ultimate rooftop experience, British lawn bowling, scrumptious bites, and premier soccer pub views. Get half off a $30 gift card to Fog Street Lawn Club now while supplies last. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Corey Curtis, News 2, joins us on the program. Corey, our segments lately have turned into like a Jared versus Joe, which I'm not used to here. But the Titans did not play a game this week, so let's see where we go. I want to start with this, which is I think Indy's in terrible shape. I think their team stinks. I think they're injured, and I think they're poorly coached. They're coming to Nashville after getting housed by Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, who's been awful this year, looked like Peyton Manning, and you're healthy coming off of a bye. If the Titans do not win Sunday, I think we got real problems. And I'm not talking real 2024 problems. I'm talking real problems at the coaching level and maybe above it. Do you agree with that the Titans should win this game, or else there are serious problems?
Well, I mean, I think if you don't win this game, you're going to be 1-6. And nobody wants to be 1-6, especially Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon, who built a team that they thought could be reasonably competitive, this year. So, I mean, this is, I hate to say a must-win game in week 5. This is a must-win game in week 5. You spelled out all the reasons that it's a must-win game. They've got to find a way, to get it done. Obviously, as you said, the Colts have some shortcomings. Now, they didn't get housed by the Jags. They were tied at 34 in the fourth quarter. So that's not getting housed. But they have been a get-well defense for young quarterbacks. I will say that.
So when you say it's a big game, a must-win game, are you talking about it's a must-win game from the sense that for the 2024 season, for them to have a shot at the playoffs, it's a must-win game? Or is it a must-win game to keep the fans at bay from bailing on the coach 6 games into his tenure?
Well, I think as far as you're pushing your season forward and pushing your plan and pushing what you're teaching, I think it's very difficult if you're 1-4 and then you go to 1-6 to keep peddling that you're heading in the right direction. Now, Dan Campbell, his first year in Detroit, I don't recall that going particularly well. But they, he obviously got things turned around. But, I don't think 1-6 is where this team wants to be, because the season's effectively over at that point. And I think as they're trying to develop, Will Levis and the things around him, I think that could be a killer for what they're trying to get done this season.
Corey Curtis is with us on the program. I go back to your report during the preseason about the Titans' feelings on the right side of the offensive line.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know the truth here, so correct me if I'm wrong. I just want to make sure that we get all the facts right. You're convinced that when you met with the coaching staff for the TV production meetings before the Saints preseason game, which was the last one, you're convinced that they felt good about the right side of the offensive line, right?
That's what they looked at me in the eye and told me. We feel good about what we've got there now.
Okay. That scares me. Because
I agree. Because I wasn't convinced, but that's what they felt like.
At that moment in time, I was like, no. And I had seen training camp. Like, I had been at practice just like you had. I had seen training camp, and I was like, no. And every time during the offseason, whether it was in March at the Combine when he said, we think that we may have something in PT and Duncan, and I said, no. When they said Dylan Radins is only going to be a guard, no chance to tackle, I said, no. When they said that they, were going to try to add John Ojukwu to the mix, I said, no. And then when they said that to you and you said that, I said, no. The whole point I'm making is it is a massive red flag to me that I can look at what I hear, and these are coaches. These guys are paid millions of dollars to know more than me. And I'm like, no. Like, I know for a fact that ain't going to work. That, Corey, it's so concerning to me that is how this all went down.
Okay. You want to hear what I believe where the disconnect was? This is just nobody's told me this. This is just me looking at it. You look at Duncan. Does he look the part physically?
Sure.
Yes, he does. You look at PT. He was number 2 or 3 offensive lineman in the country coming out of high school. Went to Ohio State. Big athletic guy, and you just think physically, all right, we can work with this, and we got this. What they did not know, and what they needed to know, and it's what Rand should have known, is that neither of those guys are gladiators. And they're finding that out now, which is why Leroy Watson was signed to the active roster. They need someone at right tackle who's willing to get in a fist fight. And they haven't found either of those guys to be the case. Because as you saw in their last game, or the Green Bay game, when PT came out and Jalen Duncan came in, it was worse. You didn't think it could be worse. It was worse. But and PT can talk about fighting, but if it's not who you are, it's not who you are. And he is more cavalier than caveman, and they need a guy ready to throw some rocks.
I mean, to me, I think PT's the kind of guy who apologizes for something he's not really sorry for. When the way he talks about, my technique has to be better. I've got to focus in. I've got to, and then he gets out in the game and does the opposite. But then the Leroy Watson thing drives me crazy because now Brian Callahan's sitting there with a straight face saying, well, we're going to try him out. Well, 6 weeks ago, he wasn't good enough to make the team. So what do you think this is going to be any better?
I don't know, but if he's willing to get in a fist fight for 4 quarters, then that's better. And so,
which takes me.
I mean, do you think he'll start? Because, judging by what he said today, I think Leroy Watson's going to play.
If he starts Leroy Watson, I am going to go nuts. Like, I am going to, Corey, I know that people always text in calling you, if you're so smart, why aren't you the GM? You know what I mean? Like they say things like that all the time. Yeah. Or I'll reference something that Rick Spielman said or Mark Dominic said or whatever. And they'll be like, I don't care what these fired GMs have to say or whatever. I shouldn't be GM. I shouldn't be coach. I shouldn't. I don't have the qualifications for that. I don't. And I'm willing to admit it. I shouldn't know more than they do. I should not know more than they do. And I knew they couldn't do this. And I know Leroy Watson can't do it. And I knew it when every Titan fan in the world kept saying, Bill Callahan will fit. And I said, look, he's a good coach, but he's not Jesus. And he cannot turn water into wine. And I kept saying it, and it just kept falling. Corey, that's the point I'm getting at with all of this, which is if you lose to this Colts team on Sunday that is in such bad shape, if you lose to this Colts team on Sunday after the incompetence from Chad Brinker's analytic department to Bill Callahan himself at the right tackle spot and how that's hurt the entire team, if you guys can be that incompetent, I don't know if you can turn this thing around because I think you might be driving it in the wrong direction.
Look, analytics can tell a lot of things, and it's not what's in somebody's chest. All right. But that's something that you've got to find out through homework. And we've seen this organization miss on that. I mean, we heard Vrabes and Robinson say for years, we need guys who love ball. And then they proceed to bring in guys like Dick Beasley and Isaiah Wilson who don't love ball, and Andre Dillard who don't love ball. And, to me, those things should not be that hard to find out. And so I will begrudgingly agree with you. And I just say that because I don't like to agree with you that often. It's a fail that they failed to understand at the core who these guys were. And I'm not just talking about PT. I'm talking about, Beasley and Panda and some of these other guys who they gave millions of dollars to and huge opportunities to and based big corners of their team on, who didn't love ball.
Well, and the other thing too about that is you're going to bust. I don't care if you're
every
John Robinson, Jared Stillman, again, if I was a GM, I might be getting fired because I would have taken Anthony Richardson ahead of CJ Stroud. And so I might be getting fired. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly wouldn't let them do what Shane Steichen and the Colts have done to Anthony.
Oh my gosh. That's a whole other story. It'd be like
it'd have
running
been
Jake Locker 20 times a game.
It would have been an entirely different program for old Anthony Richardson if I was in charge. But I feel like the problem is that the Titans, like Brinker was here last year. Carthon was here last year. They knew what PT, was.
I agree. That's
in the
what
gut
my point
and
was.
what he wasn't.
Yeah.
So then this
Matt
takes me
Jones,
to my,
the assistant offensive line coach, was here last year.
and then this takes me to my last follow-up on the offensive line, the last one. Bill Callahan says under no circumstances is Dylan Radins allowed to play right tackle. Under no circumstances is Daniel Brunskill allowed to play anything but backup center. They're paying him $3.5 million, and they don't let him play left guard or right tackle. He is just strictly a backup center, which then means there's no reason for him to be on this team making that kind of money when all I ever hear about is, they got Kaharski making excuses about how I'm not allowed to have a right tackle because of all the money they spent. They still have a bottom half payroll in the NFL. What's the problem with Bill Callahan? Like, I know he's supposed to be Jesus, but the 6 games they had of Radins at right tackle last year was the best 6 games of right tackling they've had the last 3 years. And it's like a non-starter with him. And Brunskill getting in there is a non-starter with him. And we know they're not as bad as what we've seen from some of the other guys.
I agree with you again, which, I've got a pit in my stomach right now, that the idea of Brunskill and Radins is a better idea to me. And it was a better idea to me when the season started, but they haven't been, and I know they like bigger is better for them on the offensive line. I mean, you look, Skoronski's put on weight. Cushenberry is obviously much larger than the guy they had last year, Brewer, and they draft J.C. Latham, who's Chewbacca out there. He's just ginormous. And so, they look at those guys and I guess they're just not big enough. They just don't look the part enough. They don't do it. But the bottom line is, are they better players? Are they better players? And I think you have to say, yes, they're better players. Brunskill's just look, I know he's a blown up tight end, but he's a better player. He's a willing combatant. All right. And that's what they need right now. Willing combatant.
Fireball Hot Take Friday. Corey, what's your hot take this week?
You are going to love this one. Look, he may not catch another pass his entire Titans career, but in the spirit of the David Legwan hat trick, where he got a baby, a goal, and an assist in one game, Traylon Burks is going to score a touchdown this Sunday. May never catch another pass for the Titans, but this Sunday, to celebrate the birth of his daughter, number 16 is going to score.
You want to put $500 on it?
No, that's so
because hey, let me tell you something. I was right here, right now. I'm ready to do it. Look, I'm having a kid and I'm moving, so like it's not like I just got $500 to just throw away. But like I will put that's a free. It's not a free $500, but it's $500 that I think I'll be able to get.
I'll give you 20 if you give me 100. I need 5-1 odds.
Not so sure of our Fireball Hot Take this week, are we? Corey Curtis, News 2, as always on the program.
In his career.
Yeah, well, he stinks. Corey, as always, great stuff. Appreciate you. But first of all, he would have to catch the ball in order to have the touchdown that you're referring to.
He caught one last week, didn't he?
I think he dropped one last week.
No, he caught one over the middle. He did.
Did he drop one last week?
No, in Miami, he caught a pass.
Oh.
It was against the Packers. He caught that one. He dropped the one crossing.
You're right. And they have sent the ball that he caught last week against Miami to Canton, where it is on display. Corey Curtis, News 2, as always on our program. Great stuff, Corey. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jared. Bye.
Speaking of the Titans hierarchy, I think this program may have decided to allow the Titans to open up a little bit. We'll get to that coming up next here. Stillman and Company, Fireball Hot Take Friday. Be sure to tune in to 94.9 The Fan. That's right, on Sunday for coverage of the Bank of America Roval 400. Coverage will begin at noon, and the race is set for 1 o'clock. Coverage also available at GameNashville.com.
So I got around a lot of really, really smart people. And one of the classmates I had a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Minnesota. He had an advanced analytics degree from Oxford. And he helped design the AI technology for one of the top medical device companies in the country, where the AI was used to help the doctors identify cancer in patients. And I was just fascinated by this. And so I took what was a football problem and we put it in the context of AI. And one of the problems that we have in football is we spend a lot of money on players that don't pan out for injury. A lot of times they get injured and you end up paying for them injury settlements, or you end up cutting them once they get healthy. I was like, if we can reduce our pool there, if we can reduce our risk within that pool of players, I mean, that would be a game changer. If you can save an owner $1 million, $2 million off of one decision, I mean, that's a game changer. So I got with these guys and we started to attack the problem. And to make a long story short, we were able to develop some models that seemed promising.
That was Chad Brinker on his podcast, on the official Titans podcast, at the Senior Bowl that he attended. Rand Carthon did not. That was Chad Brinker talking about the AI cancer curing model that we have referenced many a time if you have not heard this. So we have crapped all over the AI cancer curing model and all the analytics and everything else the Titans brag about all the time, because it all just sounds like a bunch of words, right? It's like, I mean, it could be a game changer if we save an owner an extra $1 or $2 million. Question, why did you give Aaron Brewer a $4 million contract last year when you could have given him a right of first refusal tender for $2.6 million? Yeah, I thought so. So we make fun of this stuff. We did a bit a couple of weeks ago where we did the AI Chad Brinker cancer curing model. We put it in the Sunshine Pumping remix that we made when we made fun of them after they lost to the Packers. And so all of a sudden, Ian, I don't know if you saw this, Chad Brinker decided to sit down with Paul Kaharski to explain what the analytics department does.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. He does a podcast, talks about analytics, and everybody on the podcast, because it's a Titan-friendly podcast, wow. And then we make fun of it, and they lose, and now it's like, okay, well, let's call Kaharski in here to do a little sit-down about our analytics, which, by the way, I think there may be a reason why the Titans, or why Kaharski backs every little thing that the Titans did this offseason that hasn't worked, because, well, he's getting a little sit-down here to go over the analytics. First off, let me say this. The mindset inside the building, I'm just telling you what I know. The mindset inside the building was John Robinson was too stubborn for analytics, and the new era of football is all about analytics. That was the mindset. Brinker comes in using big words, and, schools like Kellogg and Oxford and Wheaties and Corn Pops. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, my God, this guy, they may be onto something. But he does detail what every single person in the analytics does, in the analytics department does. And here's the article from Paul. Number one, the first person, Sarah Bailey, is the director of football research and development. As Paul writes, Bailey oversees 2 football data analysts for Brinker. She built the franchise's performance prediction model for college players entering the NFL. It basically gives a probability score suggesting a level of success for each prospect based on the athletic testing, production, historical data, and other key indicators. Hand up. Yes, Jared. So did this performance model, is this what led you to take the guard with the 11th overall pick? Oh, yeah. Also the guard who sucks with the 11th overall pick. Was that so is it Sarah Bailey's analytic model that leads to the guard? What about the running back that the Titans took with the top 100 pick when they already had Derrick Henry on their team, and we're going to spend $8 billion on a running back anyway? Did I miss something? Number 2, Aaron, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this woman's middle name or whatever. Aaron Sajal Davis, football data analyst. Sajal Davis does situational reports for the coaches who request a variety of things from her, ranging from information on situations, tendencies, coverages, and more. You know what they call that? scouting. So I guess that's what she does, is she helps the coaches out with the scouting stuff. You know, hey, they like to run this kind of formation. They like to run that kind of formation. Doesn't seem, anything crazy in my opinion, nothing to get all worked up about. So she does reports for the coaches. Alex Rogers is in charge of the strength and conditioning staff. So he looks at the GPS tracking data and things like that. Fine. Rob Reiterer is the football strategy article. He's the team's rules expert. And while Scott Cohen is also able to talk to Brian Callahan during the games, Reiterer is the main voice on analytics, rules, clock management, and challenges. They didn't know the rules at Miami. So this guy's job is to know the rules. First of all, it is the head coach's job to know the rules, period. Like, I know it's crazy. Boy, that rule book is very, very big and very, very thick. Yes, and he's paid millions of dollars to know them. Just like my accountant is paid money to know the tax rules. I don't know. Can I write this off? I don't know. It's his job to know. It's the coach's job to know the rules. But just in case they hired a guy up there whose also job it is to know the rules, he's part of the analytics department, and last week or the last time they played, they didn't know the rules. So way to go, but you got lucky you didn't know the rule. Apparently the returner knew the rule, but you didn't know the rules. So you've got a guy who's in charge of knowing the rules. He doesn't know the rules. Also, where was he on that fourth down where Brian Callahan sent the punt team on, then called timeout because the fans booed? What about that one? So he is football strategy, even though apparently this coaching staff doesn't know the rules. Scott Cohen is the opponent analyst. So his job is to break down everything about the opponent. Again, you know what that sounds like to me, Ian?
What's that?
Advanced scouting, which is not something that is new. In baseball, for instance, they used to send these old fat guys on the road. Let's say you worked for the White Sox, and the White Sox in a week are playing the Orioles. Well, they're going to send that advanced scout on the road to Baltimore, and he's going to sit there, and he's got his little radar gun, and he's going to write down, what the tendencies are, and he sends it back to the coaches, and the coaches read it, and they're like, okay, Johnson struggles with fastballs on the inner half. That's scouting. And baseball's gone more analytical in that regard too, but again, that is still essentially scouting. Adam Bondi, Football Information Systems, which, again, basically his job is that of a programmer. And Ian Marino is a football analytics developer. He was there under John Robinson, but, again, basically another programmer. So they're programming these analytic models that tell them to draft guards. So what of this group, these analytics, just this analytics, what of these analytics that the Titans have in this Kaharski article, what is so brilliant about these analytics? They draft a guard, they pay a running back, they ignore right tackle. I mean, it seems like the Titans have done a lot of things that other teams around the league wouldn't do because those things are not very efficient. Again, I know Tavondre Sweat looks fine right now. He looks like a good player. But a run-stuffing DT with the 38th pick in the draft, most teams don't do that. Because, again, 38th picks are usually guys who score touchdowns, guys who throw touchdowns, guys who play left tackle, guys who play right tackle, and guys who sack the quarterback. And right now, Tavondre Sweat doesn't do that. And in college, he didn't do that. So, I mean, they have a college predictor model. That's what Sarah Bailey's in charge of, supposedly. And their first-round pick last year and their second-round pick last year right now look like busts. So what good is all this analytic talk doing? Like, what's the positive here? You see what I'm saying? Like, the Titans love to brag that, again, John Robinson, it was the Stone Age with analytics. I mean, they found a way to get A.J. Brown with the 51st pick. Maybe it was pure luck. I don't know. But it's certainly better than Peter Skoronski with the 11th pick. Somebody help me out here. You think Floyd would have had all these people working for him? Probably not. But don't you think Floyd probably would have done a better job over the last 2 years than Brinker and Carthon have done? I think so. So here's what's happened. The Titans think that analytics is smarter than they are. So they have to go get analytics. They just think that, oh my God, we're going to be on the forefront of the league with analytics like everybody else. We're catching up. But again, what good are the analytics doing for you? What good is a rules expert up in the booth doing if your team doesn't know the rules? And I think this is all cover your ass stuff. I think what the Titans have turned into is probably the biggest problem with the government, which is all the clogging. You want to build a new house? You're going to have to get about 19 permits in order to be able to do it. Oh, no. Zoning regulations. We're going to have to add another lobbyist and go get another zoning permit and go get another lawyer to fill out the paperwork. It doesn't need to be that complicated. This is the Preds game last night. My girlfriend's Canadian. So is Terry Crisp. They were talking about immigration status. And the way they were talking, it was like Chinese to me. I couldn't understand anything about it because it's so complicated. It doesn't need to be, but it is, because that's everybody's way of putting their hand in the pot and taking a cut. That's why things that, again, need to be $100,000 end up being $300,000. That's what the Titans are doing. And I ask you this on this analytics rant I'm on right now, because I do think there's a place for analytics. But you can't just brag to me that we have analytics and then brag to me about your college performance director analytic model and draft Skoronski. You can't do it. You got to have some proof in order to back this stuff up being worth it. What do you think would be better right now, the last 2 years? What the Titans have done and what the Titans have been, or John Robinson and his my way or the highway leads you to drafting Caleb Farley stuff? I can't imagine it'd be this bad because it never was under Robinson. But that was the Stone Age. We got the people now. Yeah, a rules expert who doesn't know the rules. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And there was one little piece of that I absolutely loved. Absolutely loved. Oh, my God, I can't wait to get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 again.
So when it comes to the cap management side, sure, yeah, we're in a better spot this year than we were last year. We're excited about where we are, but we also it's about adding impact players, whether it's through free agency or through the draft. We're trying to add impact players, and when it comes to free agency, you're going to pay a premium for that. And a lot of times, these teams don't let those guys go. So we got to be really smart about it and find those players not only that can impact our roster, but also there's some good depth signings you can find throughout the free agent process as well.
That was Chad Brinker talking about, hey, we got to be smart in free agency. So they spent $50 million on a wide receiver they don't throw the ball to. Oh, goodness. So there's one part of the PaulKaharski.com article about the Titans analytics department that I just find so hilarious. You know, again, analytics, it's turned into this thing now where people are like, well, but analytics say. Okay. We played a cut from last year yesterday on the show where Willie Donick was talking about the analytics say that Tajay Spears is better than Derrick Henry. This was last season. Guess what? Tajay Spears ain't better than Derrick Henry. I don't care what the analytics say. You know what I care? First in rushing in the NFL, Derrick. First in yards per game, Derrick. Number one offense, Derrick. Beating the Buffalo Bills, Derrick. Tajay Spears is a third down back. But hey, the analytics. This was my favorite part of the article, though. This is talking about Aaron Sajil Davis. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that middle name. Football data analyst. Karski writes, she also works with Director of Football Administration Leland Taylor and Vin Marino, the team's cap guru, to produce a cap advance of an opponent. Ian, did you hear that?
A cap advance.
Cap advance.
Fancy term.
A cap. Brinker said, quote, just like there's a scouting advance, we have a cap advance. It's where we're looking at our opponent, how they constructed their team. What's the cash that they're spending by positions? What's their actual cash spend is? I want to know what they are spending in cash on these players. Just see how they are constructing their roster. Where are they spending their money at what positions? You can see what they believe in. It's interesting insight you can gain from that. Couple thoughts here. Number one, what's the word you didn't hear after the titles that involved cap, Ian?
What do you mean? Cash?
You didn't hear cap. You heard cash. So he's like, I really care about where the teams are spending their cash, not where they're spending their cap. Why? Because the cap is fake. That's why. Cash, that's real. So when somebody gets cut because they didn't want to pay him $8 million, people say, but I thought the cap was fake, Jared. It is, but the cash is real. And that's why Brinker's like, we care about where the other teams are spending their cash. I could be wrong about this. Do you need an analytics department for that? Like we go on to, spottrack.com. Now, I don't know how many hours a day Aaron Sajil Davis works. But I don't think she has to take 4 hours out of her day to perform a radio show. And guess what I do? Literally every day. We look at contracts. We look at stats. We look at, there's a topic. We research it because we're going to talk about it on the air that day. And it's not that hard. I mean, I can tell you right now, when I hear people say, but Jared, if they had gotten a right tackle, who could they have gotten? And I'm like, well, Jermaine Illuminor was $7 million with the Giants. And I know he's $7 million. It's a 2-year contract, $14 million, $6.5 million a year. I don't even have to look it up. Excuse me, $6.5 million guaranteed. I don't even have to look it up because I know it. Because I went back and I looked at it. Well, you want $6.5 million in guaranteed money? Okay. Don't sign Sebastian Joseph Day, cut Daniel Brunskill. Now you've got your money for a right tackle. Wasn't hard, was it? Morgan Moses is $5.5 million a year. Again, I'm not pulling this up right now on the computer. I just know it because I look these things up. I had a friend who's a neurologist. Well, her dad's a neurologist. She's a neurologist too. But her dad, I've known since I was a little kid. And he said to me last year, he said, God, the things you know and how you know them. And I was like, well, that's because it's my job. So just like how you're, a neurologist, a neurosurgeon, you're worried about that at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'm worried about Alexander Carrier's contract. But I don't think, it's like, wow, we look at we have a cap advance. because it's going to matter on Sunday. How did the Colts buy their offensive line? We need to know Sunday. Whatever. It's all words to me. 615-737-1025. Now, if I was a GM, I think I would have been pretty good. I think I'd be a pretty good GM. I think I'd hire the right people. I think I'd listen and be able to make decisions. Who knows? But there's one decision that I would have made, and I'm standing by the decision, and you guys are going to laugh and bicker, and I'm not backing off of it, and I will tell you why I'm not apologizing for it. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. All right, who wants to go to the Predators on Tuesday night? That's right. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. You'll see the Predators take on the Edmonton Oilers at Bridgestone Arena on Thursday, October 17th. Good luck. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. Fireball Hot Take Friday. Titans and Colts on Sunday. And Anthony Richardson's going to play. Even though right now, Joe Flacco is the better quarterback for the Colts. But they have to play Anthony Richardson. They drafted him 4th overall. He's only got a handful of starts since college under his belt. Only had a handful of starts in college. And right now, Anthony Richardson's tied with Will Levis at 6 interceptions. It's best in the league. Or I should say worst. And before the 2023 draft, I said I would take Anthony Richardson number 1 overall. I stood on the table for Anthony Richardson. I said the Titans should trade to 3 to draft Anthony Richardson. And so now I get a lot of, well, you liked Anthony Richardson and he sucks comments on a consistent basis. So let me address this before the Titans play Anthony Richardson on Sunday, a game in which the Titans should win with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. I stand by my evaluation of Anthony Richardson coming out of college. Now, if the draft were held today, I would take C.J. Stroud with the number 1 pick. I cannot move off the proof of concept that I've had in Stroud and just wing it and say that I'm going to stick by my assessment the whole time. But I'm not changing my opinion on Richardson. But Jared, he hasn't been good for the Colts. He doesn't look like a franchise guy. I know. He's completing 50% of his passes, and he's thrown 6 interceptions, and he's already gotten hurt for a second season in a row. It has not been good. I'm not claiming that. And maybe there's a little confirmation bias because I was so adamant in my belief that Richardson had talent to be a superstar when he was picked. But the reason I'm not changing my opinion is if I were a GM, and I take this very seriously on the program, even though I know it's just sports radio, I know that I would have been risking my career by making the Anthony Richardson pick. And I would have been okay with that. And I would have done it. And maybe I would get fired when all's said and done. But the one thing that I'm going to highlight is something I said at the time, which was when Indy drafted him, he's going to be a star unless Indy screws him up. Sometimes these organizations do screw quarterbacks up. You think Patrick Mahomes, who some people didn't even think was a first-round pick, you think Patrick Mahomes didn't benefit by going to Andy Reid, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Eric Fisher, the number 1 overall pick at left tackle, and a team that had finished second in the AFC and sat on the bench for a year? Okay. When it comes to what the Colts have done with Anthony Richardson, it is the exact opposite of what my very specific plan at the time was. Ian, in fact, I sent in the grid today a text message, and you can back me up on this, right, from between me and a former NFL head coach.
That is correct.
An offensive head coach.
Fair.
And the text said, this was from March 5th of 2023. I said to the coach, I'm on Sirius XM today, so this must have been a Saturday. I said, if I'm Indy, I'm drafting Anthony Richardson at 4. I'm keeping Matt Ryan and announcing Matt Ryan as the starter for next year. I'm signing Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys, and we're going to give it to Taylor 25 times a game while I have Shane Steichen put in Jalen Hurts' offense for next season. The head coach texted back and said, bingo, agree with you there. Ian, you can back all of this up and corroborate it.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, secure the veteran quarterback. That would have been the first thing. Number 2, sign Dalton Schultz, a tight end, so the young guy will have a tight end to throw to. By the way, I think the team that signed Dalton Schultz is pretty happy that they did. And Ian, I think their young quarterback has succeeded from having Dalton Schultz on his team.
At least last year.
I would have drafted Anthony Richardson and announced immediately that Gardner Minshew, Matt Ryan, or if it were the Titans, Ryan Tannehill was the starting quarterback, period. The night Andy Reid drafted Patrick Mahomes, he went right to the podium and said, he's not playing this year. He said he's not playing this year. In fact, he got criticized for it the next day. Chris Carter, the Hall of Fame receiver, said, I want to taste the cookies now if he's so good. I think it worked out for him. And then finally, give it to Jonathan Taylor, or in the case of the Titans, Derrick Henry 25 times a game, while Anthony Richardson learns the game, works on his mechanics, comes of age. That was the plan. And it was a very specific plan because I knew Anthony Richardson was not ready. I knew he only played 1 year at Florida. But I'm willing to take a guy who's faster than Vince Young and can flick his wrist and put it 90 yards down the field on a dime. He's been terrible this year. He's only completing 50% of his passes, and his yards per attempt is over 8.5 yards. 7 is the line of demarcation in the NFL. He's at 8.6. Will Levis is at 6.2. So what have the Colts done? Again, that was my very specific plan. I mean, I would have overpaid for Dalton Schultz. Because, again, I'm thinking if I'm the Colts, Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods, no thank you. If I'm the Titans, Chigakonkwo, no, I'm getting a real tight end for my young quarterback. The Colts have done the opposite. Yes, they signed a veteran quarterback in Gardner Minshew, but that was to back up Richardson. Jim Irsay, who probably is the root of the problem in a lot of this, Jim Irsay said that night that they drafted Anthony Richardson that he's going to start right away. Again, something I never would have done. They never had him in for a practice, and they already said, he's starting. I wouldn't have done that. Aaron Rodgers sat the bench. He turned out okay. Tom Brady sat the bench. He turned out okay. Patrick Mahomes sat the bench. He turned out okay. Steve McNair sat the bench. He turned out okay. It's okay to sit the bench. They didn't sign a tight end. In fact, their tight end in 2022, that Matt Ryan year, Mo Alley Cox, will be their starting tight end on Sunday against Titans. And then what I think would have been the easiest thing in the world to do, their two best players on offense, their left guard and their running back. The easiest thing in the world to do would have been to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor 20 times a game. You draft a young quarterback, and you say, okay, you're going to sit and learn. In the meantime, we're going to try to win games with Gardner Minshew, Matt Ryan, whoever at quarterback. We're going to try to win these games. But we're going to hand it to Jonathan Taylor 25 times a game. And what did Indy do? Indy immediately got into a contract dispute with Jonathan Taylor. I'm sorry. Once you decided to draft Richardson, you're over the barrel with Jonathan Taylor. You have to pay him. Like, there's no choice here because you're going to have to bring the young quarterback along slowly. I keep talking now about how I think it's a bad idea that Derrick Henry's not on the Titans because I think it would have helped Will Levis's development to have Derrick Henry on his side. In fact, last year, Taylor was only active for one game that Anthony Richardson played. I mean, they went to Green Bay this year. They asked Richardson to throw it 30 times. They gave it to Taylor 12 times, and he had over 100 yards. This season, Taylor has carried it with Anthony Richardson at quarterback 16, 12, and 23 times. By the way, you'll never guess which one they won. And again, that's before we get to the coach who keeps getting his young quarterback hurt. Oh, he got hurt on that. Let's put him back in there and call a quarterback draw. Anthony Richardson was a 21-year-old prospect who started 13 college games when he was drafted, and I never shied away from that. But Patrick Mahomes needed development. Josh Allen needed development. But the difference is they had coaching staffs that put together a competent plan for those young players. Maybe Richardson would have never panned out, even if Andy Reid was his coach. Maybe he would have never panned out if with that rocket launcher of an arm, he had Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill to throw the ball to. Maybe he would have been a bust. And maybe I would be fired and I'd be on Sirius XM NFL radio, or I'd be trying to work with Jared Stillman to host Jared and the GM. I don't know. But Indianapolis never had a plan for this quarterback, and they've treated him the same way Carolina treated Bryce Young. Just fed him to the wolves. But Indianapolis, a dumb organization that at one point was saved by the luck of being able to draft Peyton Manning and having Bill Polian as their general manager and Tony Dungy as their coach. This organization is the same organization that ruined Andrew Luck. And I am convinced they are well on their way to ruining Anthony Richardson. If you were going to do this, if you were going to make this investment, there was going to have to be a very structured plan that was going to have to be followed. And Indy hasn't done it. And so while right now Anthony Richardson hasn't panned out, I still think there's a ton of potential there. While he hasn't panned out, I'm not sorry for my opinion, because I said at the time when they drafted him, well, don't want to say this for the kid, but let's hope the Colts ruin him. And so far, I think they kind of have. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, Fireball Hot Take Friday at Stillman & Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
with Anthony, I mean, this is it's more of a gamble at 4 than 1, and these guys are more of a gamble than Peyton was. You know, I think they all, you know, they all had some things we had to talk about, you know, in terms of concerns, and I think that I really felt Anthony was the guy, Bob, and I think a big part of it is Shane and I had a long talk about what does it take to develop a pure passer, and why do you think, you know, this guy only played 12 college games? Why do you think he can be an outstanding passer in this league? Because in the end, you know, it's a forward pass game we play, and you have to be excellent there. Your feet's a great thing to have, but and you know, Shane, you know, was convinced that he felt that he said, I've seen, you know, his mechanics. I've seen him make passes, so I know he can make them. I've seen enough to really feel that he can develop. You know, when you looked at this, you looked at the 4 that were there, and that's what made you kind of determine who's your guy. And in this case, you know, we just really like the upside. I think, you know, this game is going more to the athletic quarterback. I think it's the days of Brady and Peyton. I mean, I don't know if they're ever going to return again.
That was Jim Irsay when they drafted Anthony Richardson. And I agree with like 90% of what he said. You know, hey, I talked with the coach and we had to have a plan for how to develop this young guy. And I just felt like, you know, when I talked to Shane about what kind of quarterback he could be, and you know, Peyton, it was different, but I just felt like with Shane, I could, you know, and that's what I would have done. I would have taken Richardson. Now, my plan would have been a lot different. And I've kind of already gone over that. I hate talking about the owner because it really angers people when the owner gets blamed. And I think most people in the media sometimes try to go out of their way to not blame the owner because the owner has the most power and the owner is the least fireable. But I think the Colts are bad. And I think they're going to ruin Anthony Richardson, and they have already probably done part of that because they have a bad owner who's got his hands in the cookie jar. I think their GM, Chris Ballard, I think he's a dope. And I think their head coach might be too stupid. But again, to me, that's symptoms of the owner. The coach says, we're going to throw it 30 times with a guy who's made 6 NFL starts. I don't think so. I'll give it to the running back who's been the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year. I'm going to give it to him about 35 times. But Irsay, he won't fire this Chris Ballard, even though Chris Ballard never wins. He won't fire him. So the Ballard problem now becomes an Irsay problem, as far as I'm concerned. Boy, I tell you, they had it made when they got Bill Polian from Carolina and drafted Peyton Manning, and then later hired Tony Dungy. But when Polian's in charge, and Dungy's in charge, and Manning's running the team, you're set. Like, you're set. You don't have to worry about your stupidity getting in the way. But as soon as those guys left, it's been an unmitigated disaster there. Again, they hit the lottery twice because they got to draft Andrew Luck. And they ruined him. And you can see in the press conferences, and you can see in the moves, like when they made Jeff Saturday the head coach. And you know he's stupid running that franchise, and you know it'll never change. And as a Titan fan, that's great. But let this be a sign that bad ownership equals bad football. You want to know why the Baltimore Colts traded away John Elway? Because Frank Kush, the head coach, was not liked by Jack Elway, who was a former coach himself. Bob Irsay, the owner, decided, well, we're going to make this go away. And they traded John Elway for a guard and a first-round pick. Ernie Accorsi, the general manager who would later build the Eli Manning Giants, he quit because he was like, I'm not working for these morons. But that's why they gave away John Elway. bad ownership. And if you think that it's an accident that the Packers, without an owner, are one of the best run franchises in the NFL year in and year out, you are mistaken. And this is, again, how important owner is when it comes to an NFL team. I took the 10 worst teams in the NFL right now by draft order. And I said, I wonder how many of these teams have owners I would label as a good owner. Again, good owners can have nice runs because they have the fortune of drafting Peyton Manning. But as far as, again, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Packers, consistent winning, it's not an accident that the Bills have ascended since the Pagulas with real money bought that team. So here are the 10 worst teams in the NFL. And you tell me how many good owners are in that group. Number 1, New England right now holds the number 1 pick. And I'm going to say, Ian, that Robert Kraft's a good owner, but it's looking more and more as we get further and further away from the Brady days. It's kind of looking more and more like they had the good fortune of drafting Tom Brady.
Maybe a little cheap.
And they are cheap. Number 1, New England, but we'll say he's a good owner. Number 2, Cincinnati. Bad owners. I know they've had a nice little run with Joe Burrow. Again, the fortune of being able to draft Joe Burrow. But they are consistently, for 30 years, they've been considered the cheapest franchise in the NFL. Number 3, the Rams. I just think the Rams are well owned. I know Kroenke's kind of an a-hole with the way he treated St. Louis, but I think Kroenke lets his guys run the business the way it should be run. And I don't think the Rams are very good, but I do think that he gives his football guys a chance to win. So I'm going to say good owner. Number 4, Cleveland. The worst contract and worst trade in NFL history. All because of the impatience and incompetence of the owner. Number 5, Jacksonville. Bad owner. The same guy who hired Urban Meyer. Number 6, Carolina. Bad owner. The Bryce Young trade, the throwing the drink, the blowing up the franchise every 5 minutes. This guy fires a head coach every hour on the hour. We give away less Preds tickets than he fires coaches. Terrible owner. Number 7, Tennessee. I mean, I got to tell you guys, you fired the winning general manager and you've gone nowhere but south since. So we'll leave the pundits to decide what they think of Tennessee, but I hate to say it, it is what it is. Number 8, Miami. The owner got suspended and sued. Number 9, the Jets. Boy, Ian, what a week the Jets have had.
Quite the week.
Quite the week. Led by Ambassador Woody Johnson. And number 10, the Raiders. Dumb owner, bad coaching hires, and bad haircut.
Terrible haircut.
Terrible. So of the 10, 8 I would label as bad owners. Robert Kraft, I'll give him a pass. I mean, again, as we get further and further away from Brady, it looks less and less like Kraft, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And Kroenke with the Rams is not a bad owner. Everybody else, Carolina, bad owner. Jets, bad owner. Miami, bad owner. Raiders, bad owner. Cleveland, bad owner. This stuff's not an accident, folks. Listen to Derek. Ask Derek on next Friday on Ask D Mace. Ask Derek what he would say about Steve Bisciotti, the owner in Baltimore. He's a good owner.
Good owner, you'd say.
It matters. And so Indy is awful, and we can talk about it till the cows come home, but the reality here is they're awful because their owner's a moron. And I would say good for you, but what are you doing with it? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We are to your phones next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 the game.
Yeah, Lombo, the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson. He did not play a ton of games coming out of college, and now he got hurt, and Joey Flack comes in, and he plays really well against the Steelers, and then he plays really well against the Jags. I don't think anyone's putting that Jaguars loss on Joey Flacco. What do you think of the situation with the Colts and their quarterbacks?
Well, I think they have no choice, right? I think, look, Joe Flacco's the best quarterback. He'd be the best quarterback in Cleveland. They didn't even offer him a contract. He's the best quarterback on the Colts. There's no denying that. I think even Shane Steichen would admit he gives us the best chance to win. But we drafted a young man who's 3rd overall in the draft, and he hasn't played a lot of football, and he's unique in his skill set. You know, he shows some incredible talent, but then there's a lot of plays that are just not good enough. And so they've got to go with him. I don't know how they work around it. I mean, Flacco is a great signing for them because he actually improves their offense if he has to go into the game in terms of their passing game. But what they want to become, what they want to be down the road, they need Richardson to have reps. They need Richardson to play because he's their future.
There you go. That was Mike Lombardi saying, hey, they got to play Richardson. And as somebody who would have sat Richardson last year, I don't disagree. I mean, at some point, you got to play. But I think the Colts have absolutely screwed him up. By the way, the distinguished gentleman, Ian, has gone off in the YouTube chat.
Oh, I missed the latest.
About my Anthony Richardson. Again, I had a specific plan, and he said, Ian, do not back Jared's Anthony Richardson plan. You didn't back my plan. You just backed the fact that I showed you a text message between me and a former NFL head coach during the combine last year before the draft, before the Colts drafted Richardson, in which I laid out my plan for what I would do if I drafted Richardson, and the Colts have done the exact opposite.
Sounds about right.
And that the head coach said that I was right on.
Or that he agreed with the plan, sure.
He said, bingo, you're right there. And Ian saw it, and so that way I'm not just saying, I'm not pulling the Rand Carthon, right? The GM texted me and said, great pick on Skoronski. Yes, Mr. Fake GM, would you have taken a guard with the 11th pick? Oh, no. We don't take guards. No, we don't. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Adam in Portland's been waiting patiently. He's up next on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Adam, go ahead.
Well, I got a Levis hot take, but hearing you talk about these owners, man, I'm curious to see what you thought about Bud, like your true blue Phillies. I thought Bud was pretty decent until he bobbled the Peyton Manning lottery that was going on. I feel like he crushed on him too hard. It was like a dude that likes a girl too much, and she's like, ugh. I mean, he was like, you can have a job for life. I think we had the best chance of getting Peyton Manning for a second. That's why we got Steve Hutchinson. We brought him in. Like, I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on Bud. Get to that. But Levis, this is my hot take. I don't think he's really hurt, dude. And I know we're going conspiracy theory on this, but, like, you see him in that game on the sideline. He was ready to play. I feel like coach was like, hey, dude, you're hurt, right? Yeah, you're hurt. Because, I mean, and now he's acting like it's almost debilitating for him. He's like, just getting over this injury. I don't think he's hurt at all. Go look at that head. I mean, it's super weak, so I don't think he's hurt.
So I'm going to start with the Levis thing. I do believe that Levis could have played last week, and I believe the coach decided, no, we don't want you to go back out there and hurt it more because we want to get a win so that people get off our rear ends because we want to win a game, and we're better off with the other guy. I do think that that's what happened. I mean, I'm sure Levis is still hurting. Like, AC joints are not fun. So I think Levis needed to wear a cutoff T-shirt for his interview the other day with the little K-tape showing.
Showing off his scars. Showing off the scars from his other shoulder injury.
Yeah, I think Levis is fine. And Brian Callahan said he's a full go. I think he could have played the Dolphins game. Again, they didn't even take him to the locker room. They shot him up right there in the blue tent, according to PK. You don't shoot somebody up to go out there and not play. Let me ask you a question. When you get hurt, do you go get a shot of Teradol? No, you don't. Because it's not long-term good for you. But if you want to mask it in order to get through, you go ahead and take that shot. They gave him the juicy juice. And so I think he had his helmet on. I think he could have gone back in the game. I don't think this was Brock Purdy in the NFC title game where it's like, yeah, he literally can't throw. I don't think it was that. On the Bud Adams front, I believe that Bud Adams belongs in the Hall of Fame. I've said it time and time again. I've argued with voters of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, the rules are so fakakta about if you didn't play football getting into the Hall of Fame. Like they only take one guy who didn't play. So if you were a player, they could induct 30 people in a year. But if you were what's called a contributor, there's one a year that gets in. And I think that's bullcrap. Like when I look at the list of contributors that are up for the Hall of Fame, it's guys like Don Coryell. You mean the Air Coryell offense? Yeah, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Robert Kraft. You mean the guy that's won 6 Super Bowls as owner of the Patriots? Yeah, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. You think Rune Ardelige, the guy who started Monday Night Football, belongs in the Hall of Fame? I do. So, again, and those guys will say, well, it's not the Hall of Good, it's the Hall of Fame. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Bud Adams co-founded the AFL. He told them not to sign free agents away from the NFL, led to the merger. And if Lamar Hunt's in, which he is, and Ralph Wilson's in, which he is, I think Bud Adams should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think Bud Adams is a great owner. And I think, I think Bud had a personality in which, it was his way or the highway, and he ended up being the one that hit the highway, leaving Houston coming here because he pissed those fans off so much. But when you're saying, well, I think it was great until the Peyton Manning thing, I think the idea to go with Jeff Fisher over Floyd Reese was a bad idea. For whatever that's worth. So, that's just fine. It's a biased opinion, but that's my opinion. Andrew says, Anthony Richardson going to be the next Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence. Doesn't win anything, yet you hear how great they could be year after year. Well, Justin Herbert threw for 5,000 yards his second year in the NFL. So I think that's a little different. Trevor Lawrence, I'm still waiting on Lawrence. With Richardson, Richardson, we've talked all week about the problem with Will Levis being the fact that this year we haven't seen any wow plays. We haven't seen any wow plays from Will Levis. Richardson's been hurt for half the games and still has wow plays this year. Again, that yards per attempt stat, that's a big stat. Bill Polian's talked about yards per attempt and how they look at that and say, hey, you need to be around 7 yards per attempt. Richardson is 8.6. Why? Because he's got a cannon, and he's got an accurate cannon. He can make incredible plays. He's also a great runner. What he's not is a great pocket passer. So what you can't do is you can't ask him to do what you would ask Joe Burrow to do and have him throw it 47 times in a game. And that's what Indy wants Richardson to do. And I don't know why, with Jonathan Taylor, you want Anthony Richardson to throw the ball 45 times a game. But I'll take it. By the way, did you know this? Last year, Ian, the number one team in the league in passing attempts was in 2023.
Passing attempts?
Mm-hmm.
Houston?
Nope.
The Rams?
Nope.
I'm not sure.
One more guess.
I don't know. I'm just pulling stuff out of my tush.
Sam Howell and the Washington Commanders led the league in passing attempts.
Yeah, they were losing a lot.
You know who's 30th in the league right now in passing attempts?
Is it Washington?
Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels should be MVP. Jaden Daniels hasn't thrown for 300 yards in a game. Jaden Daniels hasn't thrown for 270 yards in a game. But we think he should be MVP because he's winning. Again, that's how you bring a young quarterback along. That's how you protect with an offensive line that's not necessarily the Hogs. You run the ball. Again, I keep saying that, I never coached. I never was a GM. I never was any of that stuff. But Ian and I think, had a similar education to my friends that were in medical school or went to law school or we went to football school. Because for every day for 4 hours, we sat with the general manager, who is the best general manager the Titans have ever had. And we talked football really for 5 hours, Ian, because he got in at 1:00 every day and we'd sit there in the corner and talk ball.
Mm-hmm.
5 hours a day, every day. We'd have homework. We'd watch the games. And there's little things that I remember from that education that always stand out. The right tackle story is one of them. But he used to always say, what's the easiest way to get good in football? He'd say to run the ball and play defense. But nobody wants to do that. Everyone wants to throw. Jaden Daniels, 30th in the league in passing attempts, number 1 in rushing attempts. Just keep that in mind. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Pred season opener in the books. I got some thoughts, plus we're giving away tickets next. We'll do it, Stillman & Company. Let's talk White Bison. I absolutely love White Bison. They are the best, and they know exactly what you're craving this time of year. Pumpkin. So try that pumpkin cookie frappe or the pumpkin spice latte or the vanilla shaken espresso with pumpkin soft whip. They are irresistible. Plus, White Bison Rewards members can get your 8th drink free. Download the app. I have the app. It's so great. It's so easy. And for your sweet tooth, try their fresh baked pastries, which go perfectly with any premium coffee expertly prepared by their roast masters. Get to Twice Daily and White Bison. White Bison, freshly crafted for your everyday.
Puck comes over right side. Yossi, the quick shot goes wide to the corner. And that's going to do it. The rebound comes back to the Nashville end. The Dallas Stars prevail in the season opening game here tonight. 4-3 is the final score.
4-3 the final last night at Bridgestone Arena. It was exciting. And then the second period happened. And it was a mistake from Philip Forsberg, a drop pass. Nobody's there. All of a sudden, it leads to a breakaway. Dallas has the puck in the zone, and they put one in. Not Scott Wedgwood's fault. But the other three, they were not pretty from old Scott Wedgwood. And he and I had a very, very close seat watching old Scotty Wedgwood out there last night.
Cool.
And I got to say this, again, it's one game, and it's the first game, and it looks like Saros is going to play tomorrow night against Detroit, which is great. But I am a little worried about Scott Wedgwood. I'm a little worried about him as the backup goalie because Kevin Lankinen was actually pretty good. And Vingan sent me a text yesterday during the game that apparently if you include the preseason, Scott Wedgwood's save percentage is something like 724, which, again, if you have under 900, you stink. And 724 is all-time bad. And I did tweet this out last night where I'm like, maybe the Predators should have let the backup goalie market play out. They went out immediately in free agency and signed Steven Stamkos. They immediately signed Jonathan Marchessault. They immediately signed Brady Shea. And they immediately signed Scott Wedgwood. And I'm like, maybe in hindsight, they should have let the backup goalie market play out, knowing that they had Askarov as, the quote-unquote backup at the time. Let it play out, see what happens, see who's available, because you had to know that there was at least going to be somebody available. And instead they jumped out and they signed Scott Wedgwood. And it's like, again, it's hindsight, I know. But if they had waited, they probably could have signed Kevin Lankinen back to be the backup. And Kevin Lankinen's much better than what I saw last night. But it was a fun game because the Predators played well in the third period. They scored on the power play. Hallelujah. Thank God. Amen. Yes. And which was very, very nice. And then also, I think, Steven Stamkos hit a post with 10 seconds to go in the game. And I mean, Ian, when he hit that post, I thought, oh my God, it would have been total pandemonium if he had scored.
Oh, yeah.
If he had scored.
First game.
Being Steven Stamkos, first game, if he puts that puck in the net, tying it to go to overtime, and you win in overtime, oh my God. But the good thing, again, it's one game, it's one hockey game, it is what it is, and I expect the Predators to be very good this year. I also expect Dallas to be very good this year. So I have one good thing from the game and one bad thing from the game. The good thing is that I really feel was the Predators, and it looked like because of Scott Wedgwood's poor play, the Predators were able to avoid getting what I called daddied. I was worried there in the second period that they were about to get daddied by the Dallas Stars. They go out and spend all that money in the offseason to build a competitor, and they have some terrible goaltending from the backup goalie, and all of a sudden it's 4-1, and it's almost like they're going to run you out of your own building. They would have given you a who's your daddy, and I didn't want that. And so by losing 4-3 where a puck hits off the post and you still lose, which is never a good thing, but you still lose, it's like, yeah, but you're right there with them. You were right there with them last night. And we can look at it and say, well, they're the backup goalie. The second thing is I am worried about the backup goalie. Trott said it yesterday on the program. He's like, I've coached with a lot of good goaltending in my career. And I've also coached with some bad goaltending. And he said, and there's nothing like bad goaltending that makes you, look down the bench and say what happened. And last night, that was some bad goaltending. And it's been bad goaltending in the preseason, which I didn't watch preseason, but I'll take your word for it. And it's bad goaltending last night. That's a concern because, again, backup goaltending was a strength of this club for like the last 8 years. Again, a couple of years ago, Pecorine was the backup goalie. And then for 2 years, Kevin Lankinen was a very good backup goalie for this team. 3 years. However long. Was it 3 years with Lankinen, Ian?
2, I think.
I think it was 2.
Yeah, just 2.
2. And he was very good. So that's a concern. The backup goalie spot, given the fact that he was horrendous last night, was not a very good sign. But all in all, they scored on the power play. Yay! Did you notice it didn't take long? I said when they signed Stamkos and Marsh or so, I said I think I'd put Colton Sissons as the center of that line.
It's a little back and forth last night.
Everybody was like, no! And it took like one period for Andrew Burnett to be like, yeah, let's see what Colton Sissons looks like there. They're just veterans. And Tommy Novak's just not a big boy. I think that may be a contract they regret. 615-737-1025. Jared versus Joe. That's right, a Friday edition. It's coming up next here on the program. We are giving away Preds tickets every hour, and now is the opportunity. If you want to go to Thursday night's game, be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the Predators take on Edmonton at Bridgestone Arena on Thursday, October 17th, and listen in the next hour for your final chance to win. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. So Chad Withrow right now is with the Outkick Boys. They are hosting a fundraiser in Knoxville right now for the flood victims and the hurricane victims. So Chad joined us on Wednesday. Joe Rexroad's been at the beach all week but was working today. So this morning on Robbie and Rexroad, we had Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Yes. Jared versus Joe. We didn't have it earlier this week on Stilly's program, so we've called an audible, and we're doing it this morning. Joe live from the beach, living in a nice little happy vacation land out there, and we're about to totally ruin it. Jared, good morning. Welcome to the program. How are we doing?
I am doing fabulous. I was worried about Joe. I knew he was at the beach this week, and I saw the hurricanes were coming, but I guess Joe's okay.
I can confirm, Joe.
Thanks for your concern.
Joe must
So
be on Manhattan
did
Beach.
Stilly know? Did Stilly know that we were doing Jared versus Joe?
Yeah. I think it was his idea.
But I didn't know.
I know,
okay.
which makes it even better.
Well, you're not prepared.
Conspiring against me.
I woke up 5 minutes ago, Joe, so I think you should have an advantage here.
Oh, I'm sure you spent all night in your film room.
I
Getting
was
ready.
at the Predators game last night watching Scott Wedgwood.
Yeah, what'd you think of that?
I think he stinks.
One game? We're already throwing in the towel?
For one game, I think he stinks.
Well, he did,
I mean,
he did not play well last
apparently,
night.
Adam says the preseason he stunk too.
He
You
did.
were watching that. I have to take your word for it.
He was not great in the preseason either. We'll see if it gets a little better for Scott Wedgwood moving forward here. All right. Paul Kuharski has been asking Brian Callahan about this week. He's asked Will Levis about it. He came out with a story at paulkuharski.com about the lack of wow plays, wow throws from Will Levis. You know, obviously the turnovers are the main thing that we focused on with Will Levis to this point. But how concerned are you, Jared? We'll start with you with the lack of wow throws from Will Levis so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, he has had the wow turnovers. He has not had the wow throws that are wow in a good way. And I actually thought Levis's answer, because Paul asked him about it too, I thought that was pretty eye-opening when he said, you know, maybe sometimes which was called the Continuing Education of Will Levis. And what it was Brian Callahan and Will Levis were talking about, again, some of the wow throws he made last year that were bad decisions by Brian Callahan standards. You know, there was one that they highlighted against Atlanta where Levis, with the blitzing defender in his face, chucked a ball off his back foot 40 yards down the field. It hit Traylon Burks in the hands. You guys would be shocked to know Burks didn't catch it, but it hit Burks square in the hands in double coverage. And Brian Callahan highlighted that that was an incredible throw and not a lot of people can make it, but it was a terrible decision because Chig was releasing in the flat right at the last second, and Levis can just drop it off to Chig, who can pick up 10 yards and get a first down. And so it was kind of the continuing education of Will Levis in May was this idea that, hey, let's eliminate the unnecessary here. Even though sometimes it looks good, let's eliminate the unnecessary and take what's given to us. Or as they say, master the mundane. Let's do that as opposed to kind of some of these wow plays. What I think it's actually done, I think the intention, now everybody always has good intentions for the most part. I think the intention was, let's kind of keep some of the special things he does, but try to eliminate the opportunities for the bonehead plays. What has happened is the opposite, which is they've eliminated, by trying to get Levis to be more conservative, they've eliminated some of those wow plays. And for some reason, they can't shake the bad turnovers and boneheaded plays and everything else off. And I think part of that is if Levis takes 5 shots down the field and he connects on 2, but 1 gets intercepted, well, that's not that bad. But if Levis takes 1 shot down the field and it gets intercepted, now we don't have the other 2 to balance it out. So I think that it's it's alarming. And I thought Levis's answer was very alarming about why he hasn't produced the wow plays.
Joe,
I think they need a lot more nice throws. You know, wow throws are great, but just string together. And look, they've had a few drives where it's like, okay, there's a good 15 yards in the middle of the zone. He finds Tyler Boyd. They get into a rhythm. They move the ball. I mean, they need more just solid, good stuff before I even worry about that. I think that there's something to what Jared said about the mundane. I mean, Brian Callahan has talked so much about that, right? About like just take, and Burrow's so good at that. Just take what they give you, and then you find your opportunity to take a shot. I mean, the most wild throw situation we've had with Levis was the game, the deep throws and I know Jared's like, that was lucky in the TD to Ridley. That's fine. Bottom line is I'll take that throw where really only Ridley could catch it, whether maybe it was a total luck out by Levis, but that's how it turned out. And the throw that Burks, there's a lot of debate on our station, but I mean, to me, has to come away with. There's an example of, the people watching film of that play are seeing, I don't even remember who it was, somebody else wide open in the flat or whatever. That's great. But if the first option on a play is that play and they determined, you should have thrown it, that it was there, then it doesn't matter who else is open on a play,
Right.
That's the play. That's your first read. So to me, it's just the entire passing game needs to get to the point where there's more just solid, good throws and some consistency and rhythm. And then I think you'll have more opportunity with the wild throws.
See, I don't think he can do that. I hear what you're saying, and I agree. And I think that was Brian Callahan's intention this year, which was, hey, let's take what they're giving us, and then let's try to, go for the home run every now and then. And let's try to buckle out some of that, let's try to get rid of some of that bad decision-making, by just mastering the mundane, taking what they're giving you. And what it's turned out is, in my opinion, has been kind of the opposite effect, which is the good things he was doing last year, he's now not doing them anymore because he's focused on, the coaches want me to check it down here and the coaches don't want me to take the shot there. And there's one stat that if I was evaluating Brian Callahan, I would need some explaining on. And this is, again, not to say that the Brian Callahan has the best roster in the world and everything else, but Derrick Henry right now is averaging 6 yards a carry with the Baltimore Ravens. Will Levis is right now averaging 6.2 yards per attempt. That is unfathomable to me. The fact that Will Levis last year averaged 7.1 yards per attempt without Calvin Ridley on his team and is averaging what Derrick Henry is averaging on a rush with Calvin Ridley on his team. There's got to be some explanation for that. And I think it may be that they spent too much time trying to convince him to check it down and play safe and everything else. And I'm thinking, you know what? I think Levis might be one of these guys that you're going to live with the good and live with the bad, but you have to let him, you have to encourage him to be a little crazy in order to get the good out of him.
Joe, we'll start with you on this one. How would you evaluate Brian Callahan's play calling through the first 4 games?
I feel like at times, again, they actually have had some, touchdown drives. I mean, I even like the second half against the Packers. They had a really wow, they put together a drive. It wasn't just like the early stuff. I think it's been fine. I don't have a huge issue with the play calling itself. I think that game, you look at it at the end and you're like, man, this team has to run the football. And I think those two backs had like 33 yards combined in that game. And that can also be deceiving because when you're down multiple scores most of the day, you probably are going to adjust what you're doing on offense. I mean, that would be my quibble is you have to me with this team, you have to emphasize the run. You have to have balance, but you have to though that's where I think your offensive line is most effective. Those backs are good. Pollard has been really good. So that would be my quibble. But as far as I haven't sat there a lot this year and said, what the heck was that? There've been a few calls. Of course, there always will be. I don't think it's been bad or alarming. I mean, I still think that this offense has some parts that don't function very well. And of course, it's on him to figure that out and to design things during the week, before you get to the play calling, to hide your weaknesses and emphasize your strengths. But overall, I think it's been okay. It's been fine. I think he has promise as a play caller.
I have a lot of problems with what I've seen from Brian Callahan so far, and play calling is actually not towards the top of the list. I mean, if they've had 3 guys the last 3 years call plays. I don't know if any of them are any good. I guess we'll see with the Jets.
Todd Downing coming on back, baby.
Yeah, we'll see if any of these guys are any good. They've had 3 separate guys call the plays. They haven't had a right tackle for the last 3 years, and it hadn't made a difference. And I do think that there's a certain extent of this, which is how many plays can you really call when you can't block? My issues with Brian Callahan right now, number one, I think they're coddling Will Levis to the nth degree, and I don't mean publicly. Like publicly, defend your guy, say whatever. But when Will Levis gets up to the podium the other day and says, yeah, they sent me video of Tom Brady throwing the same interception I threw in the Dolphins game to Von Miller in the AFC title game. And, yesterday Coach Callahan sent me an interception that Joe Burrow threw and said, Joe Burrow's a good player. And so it makes my interceptions okay. I mean, that to me feels like peak coddling. And so I think they're trying to use positive reinforcement, in order to encourage Levis, and maybe that's
and Jared wants them to shame him and make him walk through the building with the bell. Shame, Will Levis, shame. You threw
Well,
it
I think anointing him the king before he wore the crown was not a good idea this offseason.
You should be in
well, again, I think
that'd
that
be amazing.
I think that anointing him the king before he was given the crown was not a good idea. And so maybe changing it up and being a little tougher. If being the nice guy doesn't work, maybe at some point change that up. So that's first thing is I think that they're coddling. And I think Brian Callahan might be a little too positive. And I think that what that's done is it's kind of given everybody a false sense over there of what reality is. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think the second thing that Brian Callahan's done that I am discouraged by is I think Brian Callahan probably bit off more than he can chew. And this is probably common amongst young coaches or young general managers who have never had the experience of doing this before, is the idea that he probably thought he could do more in terms of the quarterback and the offensive line and other things offensively than he's actually been able to implement. And I think PT is a good example of that. They saw the traits on tape that made him the number 1 recruit at Ohio State. But for some reason, they just figured that whatever it was, Ryan Day and Ohio State, and Mike Vrabel and the Titans couldn't get the best out of PT. But the reality is that PT stinks. And he thought he could do it. So I think that that's probably both with the quarterback and with the offensive line kind of telling. And then the third thing is not the play calling, but it is the play timing, if that makes any sense, which is I don't want Traylon Burks does not.
I'm pretty sure that's still play calling.
Putting Traylon Burks out there, we consider that play calling?
Well, go ahead. You said it, play timing. Okay,
yeah,
explain.
Play time
explain
that
play
some of
timing.
these guys are getting. The guys out there that need to be on the field are Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard. You can take whatever other 2 eligible receivers you want. I don't care, but those guys have to be on the field the majority of the time. And I feel like there's been this crazy thing where all of a sudden we think like the Titans offense is the Golden State Warriors from when they had Durant. And it's like, well, what do we do? Steph's got to get his shots and Durant's got to get his shots and Clay's got to get his shots. And no, to me, I don't look at Robbie. I heard you ask a question on the text line the other day. Someone said it, Paul, how do we get Chig the ball more often? Let's worry about getting Ridley the ball more often. Let's worry about getting Pollard the ball more often. The guys that are good. Instead, they play Traylon Burks 35 snaps a game. They get nothing out of them. Each game continues to be the same, and yet Brian Callahan just keeps on playing them. So that actually bothers me more than the actual play calling, which, again, it's hard to judge a play caller when they don't have an offensive line, but I haven't seen any massive red flag issues there.
Who's NWI in the Golden State Warriors? That's my question. Barbosa.
Who was the center from Vanderbilt that was on those teams that never played?
Festus?
Oh, come on.
Festus, I think, was on the early edition, but didn't they? Damian Jones. Didn't they draft Damian Jones?
That beats
Yeah,
me.
that's come on, man. NWI, that's your answer. Get him
Kevon
out there
Looney?
more.
They got a receiver making
NWI more.
Solid player.
They got a receiver making $23 million that has 9 catches. Neither one of you have a problem with the play calling. Interesting.
Well, again, what are they supposed to do? I mean, you're going
call
to tell
plays
them
to get him the ball.
throw him the ball every play?
And not every play, but you can call some plays for Calvin Ridley. That does happen in the National
Well,
Football League.
in Jared's defense, I mean, I do agree. Like in terms of getting someone the ball, that's the answer, right? I mean, so if you want to call that play calling, sure. I mean, it's like he's option 1: get him the ball, force feed him the ball, throw him a screen, whatever. No question. And I know Callahan said it this week. That's foremost on his mind. They got to get him involved.
We'll have more Jared
I will
versus.
say this.
Go ahead.
I'll say there's one guy on the team. Like I don't think that a bad team that is limited with the amount of plays they can call in a game can really figure a scheme out and try to win the game that gets multiple people the ball. I think you can really only do that with one guy. You know, like you can go into a game and say, we're getting Derrick Henry the ball, or maybe two, Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown, but the Titans weren't bad when they had A.J. Brown. But I don't think you can have like, you know, a lot of different ideas other than, hey, like throw it to the open guy and then let's try to get this one guy the ball and devise a scheme for him. And for me, that's Pollard. Because I think Pollard's the best player in that offense. I don't care that they're paying Ridley more money. I think Pollard is better at what he does than Ridley is at what he does. And what I thought was stunning was, again, who knows how true this is because Pro Football Focus said it, but they said against the Dolphins, the Titans' offensive line was so bad that they averaged negative 0.4 yards before contact. And Pollard still had 88 yards rushing. So, I mean, I think we've seen Derrick Henry that he, again, looks like the same Derrick Henry when he's got a competent line behind him, which gives me hope for what Tony Pollard is. So if I'm sitting there, I don't care how much money I paid Calvin Ridley. I'm looking at, okay, if I have to devise getting the ball to one guy, it's Pollard before it's Ridley.
We'll have more Jared versus Joe coming up next.
Let's talk about Fireball whiskey. Nothing goes down as smooth and tastes as good as ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon whiskey. I know that after the big Vandy win the other day, the Fireball was a-flowing on Broadway. That's what you do when it comes to celebrating the big moments and the big victories is you cheers it with ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon whiskey.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe happening on our program this week. Rexrode's
And
been,
it's presented by Pella Windows and Doors in Nashville.
and it's presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Jared Stillman is with us here on the program. Jared, you start on this one. If the Titans lose this game Sunday, they've got Buffalo and Detroit coming up on the road after that, which means they very well could be staring at the possibility of 1-6. So let's say that situation plays out and they end up 1-6 after the Detroit game. Should Will Levis continue to be the quarterback after the Detroit game? If that's the case, will Levis continue to be the quarterback after the Detroit game if the Titans fall to 1-6?
What's the scripture say, Robbie? If he gets you to it, he'll get you through it.
Sure. Yes.
So if Will Levis can get you to 1-6, then Will Levis can get you to the number 2 pick in the draft. If you lose this game, this game against the Colts, I truly believe Amy should be more upset if they lose this week to Indianapolis than she was when they lost to Green Bay against Malik. The Colts' best quarterback on the team right now is Joe Flacco. And they're going to play Anthony Richardson. He's a full participant, and they should play Anthony Richardson. But right now, if you're asking me who gives them a better chance to win a game, the same way that Mason Rudolph gives the Titans a better chance to win a game, Joe Flacco probably gives the Colts a better chance to win a game. And Richardson, there's no doubt in my mind, he's still injured. He just is going to play injured. Jonathan Taylor probably is not going to play. He's their best player on offense. DeForest Buckner is on IR. He's their best player on defense. Michael Pittman Jr. just got put on IR. And so the Colts have all kinds of injury problems. They're 32nd on defense in the league. And it's not just, well, they're really bad in one area. They're 29th versus the pass and 31st versus the rush. So they're awful. In fact, Malik had a higher passer rating against the Colts than he did against the Titans, which is amazing. Trevor Lawrence, who has been terrible this season, completed 83% of his passes for 371 on Sunday. So between that and the fact that the Colts have one receiver, Alec Pierce, and the Titans have one corner, L'Jarius Sneed, I really feel like, it would be so inexcusable if they lose this game. They'd have no chance of beating Buffalo or Detroit, even in the weird NFL. At that point, aren't you kind of pot committed to tanking? If you lose this game Sunday, and we assume they'll lose at Buffalo and at Detroit, changing the quarterback's not going to get fans in the stands. Changing the quarterback is not going to change the morale, I would assume, around town. Changing the quarterback's not going to do anything but have you picking 7th in the draft, 9th in the draft. So at that point, why even do it?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're not committed to tanking because we can talk about it, and we'll be talking about draft picks for so long. It'll be just fantastic. But no, they will not be committed to tanking. If you're Brian Callahan, you're that staff, with this owner, you think we're good? Let's just go 2-15 and no, everything's all fine. No,
sometimes
they're
the
not
coach
going to
doesn't get a say, because I don't think Doug Marrone in Jacksonville was totally keen on the idea of playing Mike Glennon at quarterback over Gardner Minshew when Gardner Minshew was healthy in 2020. But I think the Jaguars were more interested in Trevor Lawrence. And again, Marrone lost his job, so I don't think that playing Glennon gave him a better chance to keep his job.
Hey, Jared, do you realize you've said like 85% of the words here? Okay, just pipe down for a second. So the answer to me, Robbie, is I need to see how it happens. Like if those 3 losses are completely on Levis and he continues to do this stuff and he's not doing anything good, and again, like he has some decent pockets, he has some guys open, he's just bad, just terrible. I think you may not be too far at that point from being like, okay, just to get the misery over with, not make him endure it anymore, not make this team go out there every week and endure it anymore, put in Rudolph and you probably know at that point it just didn't work out well. But to me, it's got to be on him. It's got to be like, if there's nothing positive, if he is not showing any sign of progress at all, then that's when I would do it. Other than that, I'd keep going. If there's some good, some bad, if he's showing you anything at all, then I think you keep going with him. And again, that may be a fank. I embrace the fank. the fake tank, but you're not going to be committed to a tank, but to me, it's just hard to answer that question without knowing the performance level of the QB.
Well, okay, let's
say he
add
plays
to
the
that.
next 3. Well, let's say he plays the next 3 like he's played the first 4.
Yes.
Then would you not say at that point, Joe? Like, I mean, it's now that we're talking about 7 games at that point. I mean, do we still need more time to figure out if there's a corner to be turned?
Is Robbie asking the questions, or are you asking the questions?
That was the exact question I was going to ask.
That was your question?
It was.
Okay, and this is it's actually a good question, but I still want to give credit to Robbie for the question and not Jared. That's close, man. I'd probably keep going with Levis. Not that there's been much good. I mean, again, it's like, okay, so are you saying, when you say that, are you saying there's like a behind the back for a pick 6 in there somewhere? I mean, like how he has played. Here's the great one. If you take out those killer turnovers, is that what we're talking about? Or he continues to have just utterly killer turnovers?
Jared?
I mean, I would say that even the ones that he's thrown, like a pick 6, I know that Kurt Warner can get on there and post a video talking about how acceptable that pick 6 that Will Levis threw against
and then
Green
you
Bay
can
was,
try to
but
find the conspiracy that he must be somehow like part of Will Levis's
he must
management
be
team,
on the
right?
payroll for Will Levis. I don't understand.
Investigate.
It'd be one thing if he
investigate
it'd
for
be
us.
one
Is
thing
Kurt
if
Warner
Scotland
hired by
Yard.
Hellman's? Did Hellman's hire Kurt Warner?
It would be.
Was
they
he
made a donation
stocking
to the
Hellman's
Kurt
in those
Warner
shells
Foundation.
in Iowa?
But no, in all seriousness, like it would have been one thing if Warner had defended the pick 6 and then ignored the dropping defensive lineman. But the fact that Warner had to go to the wall for both of them, makes me think it's kind of
Must be
like
something there.
sacred cowism or something. But again, I mean, when it comes to the turnovers, I just don't know what's next. Like every game, it's something new. Again, the flick against Chicago was probably the most boneheaded thing he did. But when we're rationalizing or accepting the terrible turnovers that he's having in these games consecutively with the idea of it wasn't as bad as the other ones, that's pretty pathetic. I mean, I feel like the next interception Will Levis is going to have is going to be one where he throws it to a guy whose back is turned to him, and the ball gets stuck in the crevice of that guy's butt cheeks, and all of a sudden, somehow he comes away with it for an interception, and we're going to say, well, how can you blame Levis? The ball's stuck in the guy's rear end like a vacuum. Like, how do you do that? That's what – I mean, but then we'll make excuses. Kurt Warner will put up a video. It'll be fine.
Very descriptive on that incoming interception for Will Levis.
Well, yeah, there's got to be.
What would that one be
each
called?
Week, it's like more
Miracle
creative,
crack?
so it's got to be something. Like each week, it's something new. He's running out of bad things to do.
This is a tough competition today. There was not as much disagreement as there normally is between you two guys. I think I'm going to award Jared the winner today. I like a lot of the points he made about Brian Callahan. Way to go, Jared. Congratulations on your victory in the competition.
Whoa. You didn't explain it. Why did he win?
I just told you. I liked a lot of the points he made about
Like
Brian
what?
Callahan. I'm
Name
really mad
one
at
point.
both of you that neither one of
Name
you had a
one
problem
point.
with the play calling when the receiver is getting paid $23 million a year, has 9 catches on 19 targets. I should award none of these guys.
Let me tell you something Floyd Reese told me years ago. He said, just because you pay a number 4 receiver like a number 2 receiver does not make him a number 2 receiver. And I think with Calvin Ridley, it's like, hey, man, just because you pay him like he's a low-end number 1 receiver does not make him a number 1 receiver. And I think that might also be a little bit of the problem.
Okay. There's another awesome Jared point. I want to hear all these amazing points you love. Next segment, you detail all the great points Jared made, Robbie.
I will.
Somebody
very looking
is,
forward to that. Okay.
Somebody is upset they got back from vacation.
He's not back
They got
yet.
a reality
He's
check.
mad at the beach. Mad at the beach.
Yeah. I'm going to go jump in the ocean now. Pissed off.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville.
Thank you, Jared. Congratulations on your win. We'll see you later.
Thank you. That was Jared versus Joe. All right, last chance to win those Preds tickets to see Connor McDavid in Edmonton Thursday night at Bridgestone Arena. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you are going to the game. That's the Preds and Oilers on Thursday. Good luck. More Stillman and Company to continue next. 1025, 1063 The Game.
Yeah, another week where there's some uncertainty about the opposing team's quarterback. How are they different with Flacco and Richardson, and maybe what's the challenge with each one?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge with Flacco is his veteranness. He is not afraid to throw the ball down the field. They go hunting up for some shots as much as possible. He's certainly capable. I think he's one of the better deep ball throwers in football in general. Always has been. So that part you have to manage. He may not be able to move like Richardson can, but he doesn't need to because he knows where to go with the ball. And he ends up finding completions. Whereas Richardson, you just see the immense talent. I mean, he's the throws that he's put on tape are pretty remarkable. His ability to put the ball in his hand is a totally different dynamic as a runner. And you sort of have to treat the two quarterbacks in a different manner with your rush packages and how you rush the quarterback and, all those things that go into the different styles. But yeah, there couldn't be like more polar opposite styles you're getting ready for than Joe and Anthony. And they both have, they're all capable of beating you, and they have talent. They're just very different styles, and it's a challenge.
That was Brian Callahan on the Colts quarterback situation. So Indianapolis this week, I mean, it's probably gonna be Richardson. I mean, look, if Indy was trying to win the game, I am now going to start calling this, Ian, the cartel theory, which is, that's not rude, is it? I think it's fine. The cartel theory, which is if the cartel had your family and you had to win a game, and so you had to choose one quarterback while you tried to win that game. If you had to make a choice, one or the other, that's it. For that one game right then and there, the cartel theory. If Indianapolis had their family held up by a cartel and they had to win a game, I think it would be Joe Flacco playing quarterback. But that's not really the state that Indianapolis is in, which is why I think it's going to be Richardson. So, I mean, I guess I'm rooting for the Titans on Sunday. I don't know. I'm still trying to find a little bit of meaning in the rest of the season one way or another. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I also trying to be real when it comes to this. A win against Indianapolis before Buffalo and Detroit, woof. I mean, if you lose, you're staring 1-6 in the face. And then now we're talking number one pick. Then New England comes to town, I think, after that. And now we're really talking number one pick because you're not beating Minnesota. You're not beating Houston. So that's 3 more losses. So now that's 9 losses before you play another AFC South game. And I mean, honestly, I don't even know who's on the schedule anymore after that. It's just, it just feels all bad. Washington, that was supposed to be a win. And now, obviously, how do you feel about this? So that's 10 losses. So, I mean, again, if you want to have a semblance of a season, you got to win this one. I'm not totally sure where I sit on all this, but again, just reality's sake, if the Titans lose on Sunday, given that half of the Colts team is out, their best player, Jonathan Taylor, probably not going to play. And if he does play with a bad ankle, I don't know how effective he'd be. DeForest Buckner, their best defensive player, he's on IR, so he's not going to play. Again, the Colts are playing their quarterback, who is probably not as good as the other quarterback, who would probably give them a better chance to win right now. But because, again, the Colts are on a schedule, just like you're on a schedule, they're going to have to play the guy that they need to develop. And that's just the reality of the NFL. The Colts are terrible when it comes to defense. They're the worst team in the NFL. They are 32nd in the league. Both run defense and pass defense are terrible. 29th in one, 31st in the other. I mean, and I go back to that Green Bay game that Malik Willis started. I mean, you lost the Green Bay game that Malik started, not because Malik came in here and sliced and diced you, but you really lost that game in large part because Will Levis threw a pick 6 and you were down by 10 points in the first quarter. Indy didn't have that problem. Indianapolis lost that game because they let Josh Jacobs touch the ball 31 times. And I mean, so again, it's not like Indy has any plans of changing. Gus Bradley's their coach. He's a complete and total dope. So make of that what you will. And then like also the Titans, we talk about all the guys that are out for the Colts. Colts had a devastating loss last week on the road at Jacksonville. They threw for 330 and they still lost because their defense is so bad. The Titans are relatively healthy because they're coming off of a bye. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for the Colts, which means there's probably a game plan for both guys. So again, I mean, Simmons, yeah, he's got to have Tommy John surgery, but he doesn't pitch, so I think they'll be okay. I mean, other than Chidobe Awuzie being on IR, the Titans really aren't that banged up. And, I mean, Jamal Adams is always getting a rest day, and he doesn't play anyway, so who cares? I mean, the Titans aren't very banged up. And even if the quarterback's hurt, the other quarterback's better anyways. So if they lose to the Colts, and the line has shifted significantly in favor of the Titans, if they lose to the Colts, then when Amy has her Monday afternoon conversations with Brian Callahan, these questions are going to have to get a lot harder. They're going to have to get a lot tougher. Because if Brian Callahan is actually coaching to win, and I highly doubt that Brian Callahan is coaching to lose. So if Brian Callahan is actually coaching to win, and this isn't the Miami Dolphins of 2019, and this is the guy Amy's paying millions of dollars to win football games, and they can't win against the worst defense in the league with their second best quarterback out there, with half the team banged up, then she might be investing her money in the wrong places. And I know, it's all John Robinson and Vrabel's fault, but it's hard to blame this on them. So we shall see. I mean, we'll see. We'll pick the game here, but there is no excuse if the Titans lose at home on Sunday to Indy. 615-737-1025. Six-pack picks are next. It's Stillman & Company. 102.5, 106 for the game. Let's talk about Window Nation. That's right. I absolutely love Window Nation. I had Window Nation in my home. I said, hey, guys, tell me what I need to do for my home. Tell me what I need to do to improve the value. Tell me what I need to do to save money on my energy costs. Tell me what I need to do. And they've got so many different models you can choose from. They're good, better, best. They're energy efficient, etc. But they told me, they said, your windows are fine. You do not need to redo your windows. I said, I don't need to redo my windows. They said, no, you do not. And that's how I know they're an honest company you can trust when it comes to taking care of something as serious as your home. Right now, buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, you'll pay nothing for 24 months. That's Window Nation. 2 windows, get 2 free, and pay nothing for 24 months. But hurry up because the sale ends October 31st. So schedule an in-home estimate with the Window Nation experts by calling 866-90-NATION or visiting windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION, and that's windownation.com.
app.
Stillman and Company, it is my favorite segment of the week. I don't know if people love this as much as I do, but it is time to make picks. And I have been torn about this Colts game, so we will be picking that one last. But Ian, you were out last week.
Yes, I was.
How did we do?
Last week, actually not terrible. 3-2-1. We had a push with the Indy game. So that brings the season total to 19-16-1.
Yeah, but guaranteeing the Vols victory and then them losing.
Oh, that's right. You did guarantee the Vols.
That was a tough pill to swallow. So let's get right into it. Let's roll.
Okay, speaking of the Vols, that's where we will begin. 3-2 Florida going to Knoxville versus number 8 Tennessee. They are 4-1. 6 o'clock on ESPN. Over under on this game pretty high, 56.5. Vols are minus 14.5.
You know, this should be the whole fool me once, shame on me, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. I'm going to take the Vols. You know, we've always talked about rat poison, and we got Diego Pavia hosting a podcast now and all of that. The Vols, it's that anti-rat poison. It's that, oh, you guys thought you were good. And surprise. And so because of that, I think Tennessee's going to win. They're going to win handily. It's at Knoxville. Billy Napier, he stinks. I'll take Tennessee. I'll take Tennessee big. If they screw me on this one, though, I'm out. But I'll take them big on this one. Give me the Vols.
Okay, we transition to our next college game. Good college slate this week. 6:30 NBC and Peacock. Number 2 Ohio State at number 3 Oregon. Over under also pretty high, 54.5. Ohio State is minus 3.
So I'm going to go with a head pick here over the heart pick. I'm going to take Ohio State. Oregon has just been too up and down, and they've turned the ball over. You know, they haven't lost, but they've been up and down in their wins, and they've turned the football over probably a little bit too much for my liking this season. I think they've got the best offensive coordinator in the country in Will Stein, and I will say that till the cows come home. But I'm going to take Ohio State to win this game, and I will be elated when Ian says next week that we went 5-1-0 and got this one wrong because Oregon wins. But again, I'm going with the head pick over the heart pick. I'll take Ohio State.
Okay, to our last college game this week. 3-2 Vandy coming off the big win over Alabama is going up to Kentucky. 3-2, 6:45 on the SEC network. Of course, you can hear the game on right here on 102.5 The Game. Over
94.9.
And well, I think we maybe switch over after the Preds game.
Okay.
Maybe that's next week. Maybe I'm getting my weeks confused from the program grid. Excuse me. Over under 44.5. Kentucky is minus 12.5.
I got to take Kentucky. I mean, I'm sorry, but there's just too much rat poison. And I get it. Like, you know, this is new for Vandy. And it's not like, you know, for Alabama, they shouldn't be talking about Georgia on Wednesday ahead of the Vandy game because Alabama's the whole act like you've been there before. Vandy has not been there before. We all know that. And so I want to cut Vandy some slack. I do. But, you know, I got the coach is doing all the interviews, and I get it. You know, got to get the brand out there. And Pavia is doing all the interviews, and I get it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and they're waving the towel at the Preds game last night. And now Diego Pavia has a podcast. Like, he launched a podcast this week. That's too much rat poison. I'll give me the Cats.
Okay, we move to the NFL.
And I hope I'm wrong about that one, too. So, Ian, I want to be 4-2-0 next week.
Okay, that sounds fair. Yeah, I like that. Sacrificing for the good. Okay, let's see. We started the NFL. The 3-1 Lions are at the 3-2 Cowboys. 3:25 on Fox. Over under 52.5. Detroit minus 3.5.
I'll take Detroit in this one. I don't think Dallas is very good. I think what it's been in years past has been Dallas has had like a sneaky good team with all these great players, and Dak has been kind of a passenger. And I think now it's the opposite. Dak is the best player on the team for the most part. You know, he doesn't look right. And Dallas doesn't have a lot of good players after Dak. So I will take Detroit, and I think they'll put this one on pretty heavy.
Okay, decent Monday night game, maybe. 3-2 Bills at the 2-3 Jets. Monday Night Football, 7:15 ESPN. Over under of 40.5, pretty low. Buffalo minus 2.5.
I'll take Buffalo. If Buffalo had won the last 2 weeks, than I would have taken the Jets, given the firing of Robert Saleh and the sugar high that comes with that. But the Bills got embarrassed against Baltimore, and they lost to Houston. This is a get-right game for them. They know how important this is. I'll take Buffalo.
Okay, that brings us to the final game. The 2-3 Colts at the 1-3 Titans, noon on CBS, over under of 42.5. Tennessee is -2.5.
So I am now officially decided. Like I did not know what I was going to pick until Ian read off the line, and I've taken the Titans. And it's crazy because I've taken the Titans, I think, every week this year except for the first week. I'm taking the Titans because I know I'm hard on the Titans. I'm hard on the owner. I'm hard on the coach. I'm hard on the GM. I'm hard on the president. I'm hard on the quarterback. I'm hard. I get it. But if you can't beat the Indianapolis Colts with the 32nd ranked defense, without Jonathan Taylor, without some of their other best players, with Anthony Richardson, who might be their second best quarterback playing, all the things I said in the last segment about Indy that are bad, and they're bad. If you can't beat Indy, then you're worse than even I think you are. And I've been hard on you all year long. If you can't beat Indy, it really is between teams like you and New England for who's going to have the number one pick. But I don't think the Titans are that bad. I don't think Brian Callahan is a bad coach. And if they lose on Sunday, he's a bad coach. So I'll take the Titans. And I'll go Titans 21, Indy 13. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here. Jake and TD are next. Stillman and Company pregame show Sunday, 9:30, 102.5, 106 for the game.